Blood drips from a crystal wine glass onto marble worth more than most lives. A nameless waitress stands in silence, while Manhattan's most dangerous man stares at her like she just detonated a bomb under his chair. She whispered a dead man's name, a name buried 22 years beneath lies, murder, and political power so deep it owns judges, senators, and the streets themselves. Now the engagement is shattered. The senator's daughter is screaming, and the heir to New York's deadliest criminal empire has just realized the woman serving his wine has been hunting him for 11 months. If you want to see how far betrayal, blood, and buried secrets can drag two people into war, stay until the end. Drop a like, comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. Let's begin. Rain doesn't fall in Manhattan. It attacks. Thursday night, mid-October, the kind of cold that gets inside your bones and reminds you winter's coming whether you're ready or not. Damien Vale sat in the center booth of Le Nocturne, watching water hammer the blacked-out windows like fists trying to break in. The restaurant hummed with dangerous money, politicians, lawyers, men whose names appeared in headlines and obituaries with equal frequency. Nobody looked twice at anyone else. That was the arrangement. You came here to be invisible, even when sitting 3 feet from a rival who'd gladly put you in the ground. Across from him, Vivian Mercer smiled that flawless smile she'd perfected somewhere between boarding school and her father's Senate campaign office. Diamond earrings caught the candlelight, skin like porcelain, hair pulled back tight enough to hurt. Everything about her was controlled, calculated, expensive. She looked like the kind of woman men started wars over. Damien knew better. She was the kind of woman who started the wars herself, then watched from a distance while other people bled. "You're not listening," Vivian said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I'm listening." "No, you're looking at me. That's different." Damien lifted his whiskey. "You were talking about the venue." "The flowers, actually, but close enough." Her smile never moved. "My father wants the plaza. I want something more intimate, somewhere people will actually remember." "Your father gets what he wants." "So do I." The words hung between them like a knife balanced on its edge. Damien took another drink, let the burn settle in his chest. 3 months engaged, and every conversation felt like negotiating a ceasefire. That's what this was, really. Not love, not even affection. A merger. Senator Richard Mercer's flawless daughter marrying into the Vale family's underworld empire. Old power meeting new money. Politics shaking hands with violence under Manhattan's polished skyline. Damien's phone buzzed against the table. He ignored it. "That's the 4th time," Vivian said. "I know. And you're not going to answer." "Not while we're having dinner." "How considerate." She reached for her wine glass, fingers pale against the crystal stem. "Tell me something, Damien. Do you actually want to marry me, or is this just another deal your father arranged before he died?" The question should have surprised him. It didn't. Vivian wasn't stupid. She knew exactly what this engagement represented. The surprise was hearing her say it out loud. "Does it matter?" Damien asked. "Not really. I was just curious if you'd lie about it." A waiter appeared beside the table, young, nervous, the kind of kid who probably grew up thinking restaurants like this only existed in movies. He refilled Vivian's wine with shaking hands, careful not to make eye contact. Smart. People who looked too long at Vivian Mercer usually regretted it. "Thank you," Vivian said sweetly. Then, as the waiter turned to leave, "Actually, I changed my mind. Take it back." The kid froze. "I'm sorry?" "The wine. It's wrong. Take it back." Damien watched Vivian's face, saw the boredom behind her eyes. She wasn't angry about the wine. She was bored. And when Vivian got bored, she found ways to entertain herself, usually at someone else's expense. "I'll get you a different bottle," the waiter stammered. "I don't want a different bottle. I want you to admit you poured the wrong wine." "Miss, I poured exactly what you—" "Are you calling me a liar?" The kid's face went white. Around them, conversations died. Heads turned. In Le Nocturne, you didn't make scenes. You didn't draw attention. That was the whole point of the place. Discretion, shadows, silence. Vivian knew that. She just didn't care. Damien set down his glass. "Vivian." "What?" "He made a mistake. He should own it. Let it go." Her smile brightened. "Why? Are you embarrassed?" Before Damien could answer, another waitress appeared. Older, calmer, the kind of woman who'd seen worse than a senator's daughter throwing a tantrum. She touched the kid's shoulder gently. I've got this, she said quietly. Go check on table 7. The kid vanished like smoke. The woman turned to Vivian with a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. Late 20s, maybe 30, dark hair pulled into a bun, simple white blouse and black slacks. Nothing remarkable. The kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after she walked away. Except Damien didn't forget it. Something about her eyes, green, very green, and completely still, like deep water with nothing moving underneath. I apologize for the confusion, the waitress said. I'll bring you a new glass personally. Vivian studied her the way a cat studies something small and breakable. What's your name? Celine. Celine. Vivian tasted the name like wine. That's pretty. How long have you worked here? 11 months? 11 months and you're still making mistakes? I didn't pour your wine. Marcus did. But you're responsible for him, aren't you? Celine didn't answer, just stood there, hands folded, expression neutral. Damien recognized the look. He'd seen it on soldiers, on men facing interrogation, on people who'd learned that showing emotion was the same as showing weakness. Vivian leaned back in her chair, clearly enjoying herself now. You know what I think, Celine? I think you're not sorry at all. I think you're standing there hoping I'll just let this go so you can get back to work. I am sorry, Celine said, and I will get back to work after I bring you a new glass. No, Celine waited. I don't want a new glass, Vivian continued. I want you to kneel. The restaurant went silent. Not the polite silence of before. This was different, heavier. The kind of silence that happens right before something breaks. Damien felt his jaw tighten. Vivian, that's enough. Why? She made a mistake. She should apologize properly. Vivian's smile never wavered. Kneel, say you're sorry, then you can go. Celine stood perfectly still. Around them, Damien could feel eyes watching, waiting to see what happened next. Men who'd witnessed executions and hostile takeovers, suddenly interested in whether a waitress would humiliate herself for a senator's daughter's amusement. No, Celine said quietly. Vivian blinked. Excuse me? No, I won't kneel. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then Vivian laughed, a bright, shocked sound that cut through the silence like breaking glass. She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. You won't kneel, Vivian repeated, her voice rising. Do you understand who I am? Do you have any idea what I could do to you? Yes, Celine said. I know exactly who you are. Damien started to stand, but he was too slow. Vivian grabbed her wine glass, the one she'd complained about, and hurled it directly into Celine's face. Red wine exploded across white fabric. The glass shattered against the wall behind Celine, crystal fragments raining onto the floor like broken stars. Wine ran down Celine's blouse, spreading across her chest in a pattern that looked disturbingly like a gunshot wound, dark and wet and final. But Celine didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't wipe her face. She just stood there with Merlot dripping from her chin. Her green eyes locked on Damien like everyone else in the room had disappeared. Then she leaned down, slowly, deliberately, until her mouth was inches from Damien's ear. Close enough that he could smell wine and something underneath it, something like gunpowder and old paper. She whispered 2 words. Elias Ward. The name hit Damien like a fist to the throat. His entire body went rigid. Blood drained from his face. For the first time since inheriting his father's empire, since learning to hide every thought behind an expressionless mask, Damien Vale lost control of his reaction. Celine straightened up, still dripping wine, still watching him with those impossibly calm eyes. Then she turned and walked toward the kitchen like nothing had happened. Vivian stood frozen, her face twisted between rage and confusion. Damien? Damien, what did she say to you? Damien didn't answer, couldn't answer. His mind was racing through memories 22 years old, a funeral his father attended alone, a name never spoken again, files burned in the middle of the night. Elias Ward, his father's partner. The man who disappeared before Damien was old enough to understand what disappeared actually meant. The man who was supposed to be dead. Damien! Vivian grabbed his arm. What the hell is going on? He pulled free, his voice coming out harder than he intended. We're leaving. What? No, I want her fired. I want her arrested. I want... We're leaving now. Damien threw cash on the table. Too much. He didn't care. And grabbed Vivian's coat. She protested, voice rising into something shrill and angry. But he wasn't listening anymore. His attention was fixed on the kitchen door where Celine had vanished. Outside, rain hit them like a wall. Vivian was screaming now, demanding explanations, threatening to call her father. Damien guided her toward his car, barely hearing her. His driver pulled up, black Mercedes already running. Damien opened the door, practically pushed Vivian inside. "Take her home," he told the driver. "What? No!" Vivian leaned out. "You're not just dumping me on the curb like—" Damien slammed the door. The Mercedes pulled away, Vivian's furious face pressed against the glass. He watched the taillights disappear into traffic, then turned back toward Le Nocturne. The rain soaked through his suit jacket in seconds. Water ran down his face, cold enough to hurt. He didn't move, just stood there staring at the restaurant's black windows, his mind working through possibilities, probabilities, impossibilities. Elias Ward was dead. He had to be dead. Damien's father had told him the story once, years ago, after too much whiskey and too many questions. A partner from the old days, before the empire became an empire. A man who'd known where the bodies were buried, literally and figuratively. A man who'd vanished in a warehouse fire that burned so hot, they never found remains. But if Elias Ward was alive, if he'd been hiding for 22 years, if he'd sent his granddaughter into Damien's restaurant to deliver a message, then everything Damien thought he understood about his father's empire was a lie. His phone buzzed again. This time he answered. "Yeah. We've got a problem," Marcus Chen's voice, his head of security. "The woman who threw the scene tonight, Celine Ward, she doesn't exist." Damien felt ice spread through his chest. What? No social security number, no credit history, no digital footprint before 11 months ago when she applied here. "I'm running deeper searches, but boss, whoever she is, she's a ghost. Find her." "Already on it. But Damien, if she's connected to—" "I know." Damien cut him off. "Just find her. Tonight." He hung up and stood in the rain for another full minute, letting cold water run down his face, trying to calm his breathing. Around him, Manhattan glowed and hummed. 1,000,000 people living their lives without knowing the foundations were cracking beneath their feet. A ghost with green eyes and wine-stained clothes had just whispered a dead man's name. And somewhere in this city, Elias Ward was alive. Mad. Damien didn't go home. Home was a penthouse in Tribeca, all glass and steel and expensive emptiness. Instead, he drove to Red Hook, to a warehouse district his father had bought in the 90s back when Brooklyn was still cheap. The building looked abandoned, cracked windows, rusted doors, graffiti covering every surface. Perfect. Inside was different. Clean concrete floors, steel-reinforced walls, security cameras in every corner. His father had built this place as a contingency, somewhere to disappear if the empire ever came down around their ears. Damien had been here maybe 6 times in his life. Each time felt like visiting a grave. Marcus was waiting in the main room, laptop open on a folding table, 2 other men standing guard by the entrance. Marcus looked exactly like his name suggested. Efficient, organized, the kind of person who never seemed rattled no matter what was falling apart around him. Former Army intelligence. Damien's father had recruited him 15 years ago, and he'd been the family's eyes and ears ever since. "Tell me," Damien said. Marcus turned the laptop around. On screen was a grainy photograph, a young woman with dark hair and haunted eyes. Not Celine. Someone else. "Elena Ward," Marcus said, "died in a car accident 11 years ago. Elias Ward's daughter. Celine's mother, if the timeline matches." Damien studied the photo. Same bone structure, same eyes. Accident? Officially. Single-car collision, late at night, no witnesses. But the investigating officer was fired 6 months later for taking bribes, and the case file disappeared from evidence storage 3 years ago. Who investigated? NYPD 20th Precinct. Want to guess who had connections there at the time? Damien already knew. Senator Mercer. His chief of staff, specifically, guy named Thomas Reeves. Real piece of work. He's dead now, too. Heart attack last year. Except the autopsy showed potassium chloride in his system. Someone made it look natural. Someone very good at their job. Damien walked to the window. stared out at the dark water of the harbor. Across the bay, Manhattan glowed like a circuit board, all light and electricity and hidden connections. His father had always said the city was like a body. You could see the surface, but the real power was in the nervous system underneath, the invisible pathways that connected everything to everything else. Elias Ward, Damien said quietly. What do you know about him? Marcus hesitated. Only stories before my time. Tell me the stories. Your father's partner in the early days. Before the organization became what it is now, they ran operations together, smuggling, mostly, some extortion. Nothing like the empire you've got now. Then one day, Elias vanished. Your father told everyone he died in a warehouse fire. Closed casket funeral. Nobody questioned it. But there was no body. No body, Marcus agreed. And here's where it gets interesting. 2 weeks before Elias disappeared, there was a federal investigation into corruption in the Brooklyn DA's office. 3 prosecutors and a judge went down. The evidence came from an anonymous source, detailed financial records, wire transfers, the whole package. Somebody with access to information they shouldn't have had. Damien turned around. You think Elias was the source? I think somebody was. And I think whoever they exposed wanted them dead. Your father made it look like Elias burned alive, gave him a funeral, and let the world think he was gone. Meanwhile, Elias disappeared. New identity, new life. And his granddaughter spent 11 months pouring wine in my restaurant. Waiting, Marcus said, for the right moment. To do what? I don't know yet. But boss, whatever she's planning, it's not random. She didn't throw that scene with Vivian by accident. She wanted you to react, wanted everyone to see it. Damien's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stared at it for a long moment, then answered. Mr. Vale. A man's voice, old and rough like gravel. I apologize for my granddaughter's methods. She's always had a flair for the dramatic. Damien's pulse kicked up. Elias Ward. The same. Or what's left of him anyway. 22 years is a long time to be a ghost. Where are you? Close enough to know you're standing in your father's safe house in Red Hook. Close enough to know Marcus Chen is running background checks on my family. Close enough to know you're about to make the biggest decision of your life. Which is? Whether to trust me or trust Senator Richard Mercer. The name landed like a bomb. Damien glanced at Marcus, who was already typing frantically on his laptop. Why would I need to choose? Damien asked carefully. Because you can't have both. Your father understood that. It's why he hid me. It's why he built connections to Mercer's world, but never truly joined it. He knew what Mercer was building. A corruption network so deep it owns half the federal government and most of New York's legal system. Judges, prosecutors, police commissioners, all bought and paid for, all loyal to one man. If this is true, why tell me? Why now? Because the evidence is about to surface, and when it does, Mercer will burn this city to the ground to keep it buried. Your father promised me protection for my family, promised that when the time came, a veil would stand on the right side of this war. I need to know if that still means something. Damien closed his eyes. His father's voice echoed in his memory, whispered conversations late at night when Damien was supposed to be asleep. Some promises you keep even after you're dead, especially after you're dead. Meet me, Damien said. Face to face, no games. Tomorrow, noon, Riverside Park, the Boat Basin Cafe. Come alone. And if I bring Marcus, then Celine dies. The old man's voice went flat. Mercer already has people watching her. The only reason she's alive right now is because nobody knows what she told you. The moment they suspect she's more than a waitress, she's gone. So you come alone, we talk, and then you decide whether your father's promises died with him. The line went dead. Damien stood motionless, phone still pressed to his ear, while the weight of 22 years of silence settled onto his shoulders like a corpse. Marcus was watching him. Boss? Riverside Park, tomorrow at noon. That's a trap. Probably. So we're not going. Damien looked at his oldest friend, the man who'd protected him through gang wars and federal investigations and the bloody transition when his father died and left him an empire nobody thought he was ready for. Marcus had never lied to him, never questioned him in front of others, never once suggested Damien was in over his head. He was doing all three right now with his eyes. I'm going, Damien said quietly. Alone. That's insane. My father made a promise. Your father's dead. The words hung in the air like gun smoke. Damien walked past Marcus toward the door, then stopped. Find out everything you can about Senator Mercer, financial records, campaign donors, every person who's worked for him in the last 20 years. I want to know if Elias is telling the truth. And if he is? Damien didn't answer. He pushed through the door and walked out into the rain-soaked Brooklyn night, leaving Marcus and his warnings behind. Bams. Celine Ward sat in a studio apartment in Chinatown, watching rain run down the window, while her grandfather's voice crackled through a burner phone. He answered, Elias said, just like his father would have. That doesn't mean he'll help us. No, but it means he hasn't called Mercer yet. That's something. Celine touched her blouse, still damp with wine. Her face itched where the alcohol had dried on her skin. She could still feel Vivian Mercer's hatred, sharp and bright as a blade. Could still see Damien Vale's expression when she'd whispered the name. Shock, recognition, fear. Good. Let him be afraid. Let him understand what it felt like to have your entire world shift beneath your feet. He could still turn on us, Celine said. He won't. You're betting our lives on a dead man's promise. I'm betting on blood, Elias replied. Damien's father swore an oath, not in words, in action. He hid me when every cop and criminal in New York wanted me dead. Gave me new papers, new name, let the world think I burned alive. That kind of loyalty doesn't disappear just because a man dies. You're assuming the son is like the father. I'm assuming the son wants to know the truth. And once he knows, he won't be able to walk away. Celine closed her eyes. Her mother's face flickered in the darkness behind her eyelids, smiling, laughing, alive. Then the other memory, the one that never left. Flashing lights, twisted metal. Her mother's hand cold and still against steering wheel. Not an accident. Never an accident. Senator Richard Mercer had ordered her mother's death because Elena Ward had started asking questions, had started digging through her father's old files, had threatened to expose the corruption network that Mercer had spent decades building. So they'd murdered her, made it look like a DUI, and gotten away with it for 11 years. Celine, her grandfather's voice pulled her back. Are you all right? No, but I will be, after this is over. It might get worse before it gets better. I know. People are going to die. I know that too. Elias was quiet for a moment. Then, your mother wouldn't want this. She'd want you safe, far away from all of this. Mom's dead because she tried to expose the truth. I'm finishing what she started. That's what she'd want. Another silence. Then a sound that might have been a sigh or might have been something breaking. Get some sleep, Elias said finally. Tomorrow changes everything. The line went dead. Celine set down the phone and stared at her reflection in the dark window. A stranger's face wearing her features, hard and tired and absolutely certain. Tomorrow, Damien Vale would meet her grandfather. Tomorrow, the senator's empire would start crumbling. Tomorrow, the war her mother died fighting would finally begin. And Celine Ward would make damn sure that this time, someone paid for every drop of blood that had been spilled in silence. She stood up, walked to the small table in the corner, and opened the drawer. Inside was a photograph, her mother holding baby Celine in front of a park she couldn't remember. Both of them smiling, both of them safe. Before the lies, before the running, before everything burned down. Celine touched her mother's face one more time, then closed the drawer and turned off the lights. In the darkness, rain drummed against the window like fingers tapping out a code. Somewhere across the city, Damien Vale was making decisions that would decide whether he was his father's son. And somewhere in a luxury townhouse on the Upper East Side, Senator Richard Mercer was about to learn that the past he'd buried was clawing its way back to the surface. The board was set. The pieces were moving, and nobody was walking away from this without scars. Damien didn't sleep. He sat in his father's office now, though it never felt that way, watching the city wake up through floor-to-ceiling windows. Dawn came gray and reluctant, spreading across Manhattan like a stain. Coffee went cold in his hand. His phone buzzed every 15 minutes with messages from Vivian, each one angrier than the last. He ignored them all. At 6:30, Marcus appeared in the doorway looking like he hadn't slept either. "You find anything?" Damien asked without turning around. "Too much." Marcus dropped a thick folder on the desk. Senator Mercer's financial history reads like a blueprint for institutional corruption. Campaign contributions from shell companies, real estate deals that don't make sense until you see who else invested, offshore accounts in the Caymans, Luxembourg, Singapore, and that's just the surface level. Damien opened the folder. Pages of transactions, highlighted names, connection diagrams that looked like spider webs. How far back? 30 years, maybe longer. This isn't some politician taking bribes, boss. This is systematic. He built an entire network. Judges who owe him favors, prosecutors who look the other way, cops on his payroll. It's not just New York, it's federal. It goes all the way up. And my father knew. Marcus hesitated. Your father did business with some of these people. The construction deals in Queens, that waterfront development in Brooklyn. He couldn't have avoided crossing paths with Mercer's network. That's not what I asked. Yeah, he knew. Damien closed the folder, pressed his palms against the desk hard enough to hurt. His father had been careful, meticulous, always 3 moves ahead of everyone else. If he'd hidden Elias Ward for 22 years, there was a reason. And if that reason had anything to do with Richard Mercer, then the engagement to Vivian wasn't just politics, it was insurance, or maybe a trap. I need to know something, Damien said quietly. If this goes sideways, if Mercer comes after us, how many of our people will stay loyal? Marcus's silence was answer enough. That bad? Damien asked. Half our operation depends on connections Mercer's network controls. Shipments through ports he influences. Protection from prosecutors who work for him. If we make an enemy of the senator, we lose infrastructure we've spent decades building. Some of our guys will see that math and walk. Others will see it and pick the winning side. Which is? Right now, Mercer's. He's got the power, the connections, the leverage. We've got loyalty and some very angry men with guns. That's not a fair fight. Damien stood up, walked to the window. Below, the city churned, cars, people, a million lives moving through their routines without knowing the ground was shifting beneath them. He thought about his father's funeral 3 years ago, how half of New York's power structure had shown up to pay respects. Politicians and criminals standing shoulder to shoulder, all pretending they were something other than what they were. Senator Mercer had given the eulogy, had called Damien's father a pillar of the community, had shaken Damien's hand and promised continued cooperation between their families. And the whole time, he'd known about Elias Ward, known about the buried evidence, known that one day this alliance would crack wide open. I'm meeting Elias at noon, Damien said. Riverside Park. I still think it's a trap. Probably, but I need to hear what he knows, face to face. And if Mercer has people watching, then they'll see me taking a walk in the park. Nothing suspicious about that. Marcus made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a curse. Everything about this is suspicious. You break off a dinner with your fiancée, spend the night in a safe house, and now you're meeting a ghost in broad daylight. Mercer's not stupid. He's going to know something's wrong. Let him know. Maybe it'll make him nervous. Nervous people make mistakes. So do desperate ones. Damien turned around. Marcus was watching him with an expression that reminded Damien of his father. Concern hidden behind practicality. Affection buried under layers of professional distance. They'd known each other since Damien was 22, fresh out of college and completely unprepared to inherit an empire. Marcus had taught him how to read a room, how to spot a lie, how to understand that power was built on perception, and perception could shift in a heartbeat. You think I'm making a mistake, Damien said. I think you're making a choice. Mistakes come later. Then help me make it a smart one. Marcus nodded slowly. I'll have people positioned around the park, far enough away they won't spook Elias, close enough to extract you if things go bad. And boss? If this meeting goes the way I think it will, you need to be ready for what comes next. Which is war. The kind that doesn't end with negotiations and handshakes. The kind where you pick a side and burn every bridge behind you. Damien looked at the folder on his desk, at the evidence of corruption spanning 3 decades, at the name Richard Mercer highlighted on a dozen pages. His father had walked this same tightrope, balancing between the underworld and the establishment, between violence and legitimacy. Had died before ever explaining why. Maybe because there was no explanation. Maybe because some promises were worth keeping even when they destroyed everything else. Get your people in position, Damien said. And Marcus, if I don't walk out of that park, you make sure Elias does. Whatever he knows, it doesn't die with him. What about you? I'll be fine. That's not what I asked. Damien grabbed his coat. Then don't ask questions you don't want answers to. He walked out before Marcus could argue, leaving the folder and its implications behind. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual, the lobby emptier. Outside, New York was in full morning chaos, taxis honking, construction crews jackhammering concrete, delivery trucks blocking intersections. Normal, mundane. The kind of noise that reminded you life kept moving no matter what personal apocalypse you were walking toward. His phone buzzed again. This time he answered. We need to talk. Vivian's voice, ice cold and razor sharp. Not now. Yes, now. You humiliated me last night. You left me on the street like some kind of... I said not now. Don't you dare hang up on me, Damien. I don't care what that waitress said to you. I don't care if you're having some kind of crisis. You don't treat me like... He hung up. 3 seconds later, the phone rang again. He let it go to voicemail. Then another call. Another. Finally, he shut the phone off completely and threw it in his pocket. The morning stretched ahead like a prison sentence. He had 5 hours until noon. 5 hours to prepare for a conversation that could end with him dead or declare war on one of the most powerful men in America. He went to the gym instead. But Riverside Park at noon looked like a postcard. Trees turning gold and red, the Hudson River glittering in October sunlight, joggers and dog walkers and tourists taking photos. Normal, safe, exactly the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened. Damien sat at a table outside the Boat Basin Cafe, coffee untouched, watching people pass by. Families, couples, college kids skipping class. None of them knew they were extras in someone else's war. Marcus's people were out there somewhere. Damien couldn't see them, but he felt their presence, small shifts in the crowd's pattern, faces that appeared too often. The same delivery van parked 3 blocks away for 20 minutes. Good. If Elias was watching, he'd see Damien had backup. If Mercer's people were watching, they'd see the same thing. Let them all wonder. At 12:15, an old man sat down across from him. Elias Ward looked nothing like his photographs. Those showed a man in his 40s, dark-haired and sharp-eyed, the kind of face that belonged in boardrooms or backrooms depending on the decade. The man sitting across from Damien was 70-something, gray beard, weathered skin, eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. He wore a faded jacket and jeans, the kind of clothes that made you invisible in a city full of people trying to be seen. You came, Elias said. His voice matched the gravel Damien remembered from the phone. You're late. I was watching, making sure you didn't bring the entire organization. Just half of it. Elias smiled slightly. Your father would have brought them all. He never trusted anyone to watch his back except himself. My father's dead. I know. I was there. Damien went still. The funeral? At the back. Nobody noticed. I needed to see for myself. Elias picked up Damien's untouched coffee, took a sip, made a face. Cold. You've been sitting here a while. Waiting for a ghost tends to take time. Fair enough. Elias set down the cup. So, let's get to it. You want to know if I'm telling the truth about Mercer. You want to know why your father hid me. You want to know what I have that's worth getting killed over. Am I close? Close enough. Then I'll start with the important part. Elias reached into his jacket. Damien tensed, ready to move, but the old man pulled out a flash drive. Small, black, unremarkable. Everything's on here. Financial records. Wire transfers. Authenticated testimony from people Mercer thought he'd silenced. Proof that he's been running a corruption network for 30 years, buying judges and prosecutors and cops like they're baseball cards. Damien stared at the drive. Why show me? Because in 3 days, this evidence goes public. I've already sent copies to the FBI, the New York Attorney General, and 4 different news outlets with instructions to publish if I disappear. Mercer knows it's coming. He just doesn't know where the evidence is or who has it. And you think he'll assume I do? I think the moment I make this public, Mercer will come after everyone my family ever spoke to. Everyone we trusted. Everyone we might have told. Your father protected me once. That makes you a target, whether you help me or not. Damien looked across the table at this man who'd spent 22 years hiding, who'd watched the world move on without him, who'd lost his daughter to a senator's paranoia and was now betting everything on a dead man's promise. "Why did my father help you?" Damien asked. "The real reason." Elias was quiet for a long moment. The sounds of the park drifted around them. Laughter, distant music, the hum of traffic on the West Side Highway. Normal life. The kind neither of them had anymore. "Your father and I started together," Elias said finally. "Back when the city was a different place. Before the money got too big, before the stakes got too high. We ran small operations, smuggling, mostly, some gambling. Nothing that would get us killed. Then one day I stumbled onto something I wasn't supposed to see. Mercer's corruption. The beginnings of it. A young prosecutor taking bribes to drop cases. Small stuff. But I followed the thread, and it led to bigger fish. Judges, politicians, money moving through accounts that shouldn't exist. I realized I was looking at something massive, a system being built from the ground up. So I did what any idiot would do. I started documenting it. And Mercer found out. Eventually. By then, I had enough evidence to burn his entire network. But I also had a daughter. A family. I couldn't just go to the FBI without protection, and I couldn't trust anyone in the system because I didn't know who Mercer owned. Your father was the only person I trusted, so I went to him. And he hid you. Made it look like I died. Gave me new papers. Moved my family to Connecticut under a different name. For 22 years, we lived like ghosts. And your father never told anyone, never asked for anything in return. Just kept his promise. Damien felt something cold settle in his chest. Until Mercer killed your daughter. Elias's expression hardened. Elena got curious, started asking questions about her childhood, why we'd moved, why I never talked about the past. I tried to deflect, but she was smart, stubborn. Eventually, she found old documents I'd hidden, started researching Mercer on her own. I didn't know until it was too late. The car accident, murder, made to look like drunk driving. She'd never had more than one glass of wine in her life. Elias's hands shook slightly. He clasped them together, knuckles white. Mercer didn't even know who she was. He just knew someone was digging into his past, asking dangerous questions. So he had her killed. Routine silencing. Probably didn't think about it twice. The anger in the old man's voice was quiet, controlled. The kind that had been burning for 11 years without ever going out. Damien understood that kind of anger. He'd carried it himself after his father died. Rage at the unfairness, at being left behind with questions nobody would answer. "Celine knows," Damien said, "about her mother. She figured it out. Took her years, but she's like Elena that way. Doesn't let things go. When she learned the truth, she wanted revenge. I told her revenge gets you killed. She said she didn't care. So we made a plan. A careful one. She'd infiltrate your restaurant, get close enough to test whether you were like your father. If you were, we'd approach you. If you weren't, she'd disappear. We both would, but last night she decided to move up the timeline. That scene with your fiancé wasn't part of the plan. Celine saw an opportunity and took it. She put a target on her back. She put a target on all of us." Elias slid the flash drive across the table. "Which is why I need to know right now. Are you with me or against me? Because once this evidence goes public, there's no neutral ground left. You're either standing with the people trying to expose corruption, or you're standing with the people who've been enabling it for decades." Damien picked up the flash drive, felt its weight. Barely anything, maybe a few ounces, but carrying enough information to collapse empires. He thought about Vivian, about the wedding plans, about the careful alliance his father had built with Senator Mercer. Thought about what it would mean to throw all of that away. Then he thought about Celine standing in his restaurant with wine running down her face, whispering a name that should have stayed buried forever. "Where is she?" Damien asked. "Safe. For now." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting until I know you're committed." Damien closed his fist around the flash drive. "If I help you, I lose everything my father built. The alliances, the protection. Half my organization will walk. The other half might try to kill me." "I know. And if this evidence doesn't stick, if Mercer's network is too deep to prosecute, then we've just made enemies of the most powerful people in the country for nothing. That's the risk." So give me a reason. One reason why I should trust you. Elias met his eyes. Because your father did. And you want to know why. You want to understand what promise was worth hiding a man for 22 years, worth protecting his family, worth keeping secret even on his deathbed. This is it. This is the promise. And you're the only person left who can keep it. Damien stood up. Around them, the park continued its oblivious routine. Children playing, couples walking hand in hand, tourists laughing at some shared joke. None of them knew the world had just shifted. None of them understood that decisions made at a cafe table could ripple outward until they touched everyone. I need to think, Damien said. You've got until tomorrow morning. After that, the evidence goes public with or without your help. And Mercer comes after everyone. Damien pocketed the flash drive and walked away without another word. Behind him, Elias Ward stayed seated, an old man drinking cold coffee while the sun climbed higher and time ran out for all of them. Marcus was waiting 3 blocks away in an SUV with tinted windows. Well, he asked as Damien climbed in. Drive? Where? Anywhere. Just drive. They headed south on the West Side Highway, the Hudson River sliding past like molten silver. Damien pulled out the flash drive, turned it over in his hands. So small, so dangerous. What is that? Marcus asked. Everything. Or nothing, depends on whether it's real. You going to find out? Eventually. First, I need to make a phone call. He pulled out his phone, powered on now, 53 missed calls from Vivian, a dozen texts ranging from angry to threatening, and dialed a number he hadn't used in 2 years, 3 rings. Then, Vale, wasn't expecting to hear from you. FBI Special Agent Catherine Reese. She'd investigated Damien's organization twice in the past 5 years. Never found enough evidence to prosecute, and developed a grudging professional respect that occasionally crossed into something like friendship. Damien had helped her once, fed her information about a rival gang that was trafficking kids, and she'd never forgotten it. I need a favor, Damien said. Of course you do. People only call me when they need something. Can you talk? A pause, background noise fading. I'm in my car. What's this about? Corruption, the big kind. Federal level. Another pause, longer this time. I'm listening. Hypothetically, if someone had evidence of a massive corruption network, judges, prosecutors, politicians, what would they need to do to make sure that evidence didn't disappear? Hypothetically? Sure. They'd need multiple copies sent to multiple agencies simultaneously. FBI, DOJ, State AG, Inspector General's Office. And they'd need documentation of chain of custody, authenticated sources, and probably witness protection for anyone involved. Why are you asking? Damien watched the city scroll past outside the window. Because I might have that evidence, and I need to know if it's worth dying over. Jesus, Vale, what did you get yourself into? Something my father left unfinished. Your father's dead. I know, but his promises aren't. Catherine was quiet for a moment, then, if this evidence is real, if it's as big as you're suggesting, you need to bring it in immediately. Tonight. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. People who sit on information like that tend to end up in car accidents or suicide by 2 bullets to the back of the head. Noted. I'm serious, Damien. If you have what you say you have, there are people who'll kill you just for knowing about it. Bring it in. Let us handle it. And if I don't trust the people handling it, then you're already dead. You just don't know it yet. He hung up. Marcus was watching him in the rearview mirror. FBI? Marcus asked. She says bring it in immediately. She's right. Maybe. Or maybe the moment I hand over this evidence, it disappears into the same system that's been protecting Mercer for 30 years. Elias said he doesn't trust anyone in law enforcement. There's probably a reason for that. So what's your plan? Damien didn't answer immediately. They were passing through Chelsea now, glass towers reflecting afternoon light, luxury condos built on top of old warehouses where his father used to run operations. The city was always changing, always building new things on top of old foundations. But the foundations remained. And if those foundations were rotten, his phone rang. Vivian. He answered before he could talk himself out of it. Finally, she snapped. Where the hell are you? Working. Working. You've been working since you abandoned me last night. What's going on, Damien? And don't lie to me. I know something's wrong. Nothing's wrong. That waitress said something to you. What was it? It doesn't concern you. Everything about you concerns me. We're getting married in 4 months. Whatever's happening, I have a right to know. Damien closed his eyes. 4 months. A wedding at the plaza. 2 families joining together in front of everyone who mattered. A partnership built on power, money, and mutual advantage. And absolutely no truth. I need to ask you something, Damien said, and I need you to answer honestly. What? Your father, his political career. How much do you actually know about how he built it? Silence, long enough that Damien thought she might hang up. Why are you asking me that? Vivian's voice had changed, colder, more careful. Just answer the question. My father worked hard. He built relationships. He made smart alliances. That's how politics works. That's not what I asked. Then what are you asking? I'm asking if you know about the bribes, the bought judges, the prosecutors on his payroll. I'm asking if you know your father built his entire career on corruption. Another silence. Then, you need to stop talking right now. Why? Because it's not true? Or because you already know it is? Damien, listen to me very carefully. Whatever you think you know, whatever someone told you, you need to forget it. Immediately. Do you understand? No, I don't. Then let me make it clear. My father has spent his entire life building something. He's protected this family, provided for us, made us untouchable. And he didn't do that by being nice. He did it by being smart, by understanding that power requires compromise. If you're too naive to understand that, then maybe you're not ready to be part of this world. Damien felt something crack inside his chest. So you do know. Of course I know. I've known since I was 16. And you know what? I don't care, because that's how the world works. That's how it's always worked. The only difference is some people are honest about it. Your father had someone killed, Vivian. A woman who was asking questions. He had her murdered and made it look like an accident. I don't know what you're talking about. Elena Ward, 11 years ago. Car accident that wasn't an accident. Dead silence. Then, very quietly, how do you know that name? Does it matter? It matters a lot. That name is buried. It's been buried for over a decade. The only way you'd know it is if someone told you, someone who shouldn't be alive. The words hung between them like drawn weapons. Jesus Christ, Vivian whispered. Elias Ward, he's alive. That waitress, she's his granddaughter. That's what she said to you. Damien didn't answer. Didn't need to. You need to tell me right now where he is, Vivian said, her voice sharp as a blade. My father needs to know. Immediately. No. This isn't a request. I don't care. Damien, you're not thinking clearly. If Elias Ward is alive, if he has evidence, then he's a threat to everyone, including you, including your entire organization. The moment he goes public, the federal government will start investigating everyone connected to my father's network. That means you. That means every operation you run. They'll dismantle everything. Maybe that's overdue. Are you insane? You'd throw away everything your father built because some old man convinced you to play hero? My father hid Elias Ward for 22 years. He made a promise. I'm keeping it. Your father was protecting himself. Don't you see? He hid Elias because if Elias went down, he'd take everyone with him. It wasn't loyalty. It was survival. You don't know that. I know my father investigated your father's relationship with Elias Ward years ago. I know he found connections, evidence that they were partners in more than just business. Your father wasn't a hero, Damien. He was a criminal who got lucky. And your father's a corrupt politician who had a woman killed for asking questions. Then we're both children of monsters. Welcome to reality. Damien's hand tightened around the phone. Outside, Manhattan continued its relentless motion. Cars, people, commerce. A machine that never stopped turning no matter what happened to the people inside it. I'm not marrying you, he said quietly. Vivian laughed. Not her practiced social laugh. This was something raw, almost hysterical. Yes, you are. Because if you don't, my father will destroy you. He'll dismantle your organization piece by piece. He'll have your people arrested, your assets frozen, your operations shut down. And when there's nothing left, he'll make sure you spend the rest of your life in a federal prison. Let him try. You think you can fight him? You think you have the resources, the connections, the power to go up against a United States senator with 30 years of institutional support? I think I have something he doesn't. Which is? The truth. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, sad, almost pitying. The truth doesn't matter, Damien. It never has. Power matters. And right now my father has all of it. She paused. I'll give you 24 hours to reconsider. After that, you're making a choice you can't take back. She hung up. Damien sat motionless, phone still pressed to his ear, while traffic flowed around the SUV and the city hummed its indifferent song. Marcus was watching him in the mirror. That sounded bad. She knows. About Elias. About everything. Which means Mercer knows. Yeah. So what do we do? Damien looked at the flash drive in his hand, at the evidence that could either expose corruption or get them all killed. Thought about his father sitting in this same position decades ago, making the same impossible choice. Keep the promise. Or survive. Trust the system. Or burn it down. Call a meeting, Damien said. Everyone. Tonight. Everyone? Every captain. Every lieutenant. Everyone who's been with us since my father's time. I need to know who'll stand with me and who'll walk. And if most of them walk, then we fight with whoever's left. Marcus nodded slowly, pulled out his phone. Damien watched the city scroll past and tried to remember the last time he'd felt certain about anything. Came up empty. Bucket. The meeting happened in a warehouse in Red Hook, the same safe house where they'd been the night before. By 8 p.m., 20 men filled the space, the core of Damien's organization, soldiers who'd served his father and stayed loyal through the transition. Hard men, dangerous men, men who'd killed and would kill again without hesitation if the situation required it. They stood around a folding table looking at Damien like he'd called them to their own funeral. Maybe he had. We have a problem, Damien started. No preamble, no easing into it. Senator Richard Mercer has been running a corruption network for 30 years. Judges, prosecutors, federal officials, all bought and paid for. We've been doing business with his network since my father's time. That ends tonight. Silence. 20 faces watching him, weighing his words against their own survival instincts. Tony Salvatore spoke first. Old guard. Been with the family since Damien was a kid. What do you mean it ends? I mean we cut all ties. Every operation that depends on Mercer's connections gets shut down or restructured. Every dirty cop on his payroll we stop working with. Every prosecutor he owns we assume is compromised. That's half our infrastructure, someone else said. Carlos Martinez, logistics guy. We can't just, we don't have a choice. In 48 hours, evidence of Mercer's corruption goes public. FBI raids, federal investigations. Everyone connected to him becomes a target. We either distance ourselves now or go down with him. More silence. Then Tony again. How do you know this? Because the evidence is coming from someone my father protected, someone Mercer thought was dead. Elias Ward, Marcus said quietly. Every head turned. Some of the older men, the ones who'd been around long enough to remember, exchanged glances. The younger guys looked confused. Elias Ward died 20 years ago, Tony said. He didn't. My father faked his death and hid him, gave him new identity, protection, everything. Now Elias is about to expose Mercer, and we're caught in the middle. So we give up Ward, someone said. Hand him over to Mercer. Problem solved. No. Why the hell not? You'd rather go to war with a senator than give up some old man who's been hiding for 2 decades. My father made a promise. I'm keeping it. Tony shook his head. Your father also made promises to us. To keep this organization running. To protect the people under his command. You're talking about throwing all of that away. I'm talking about doing the right thing. The right thing gets us killed. Maybe. But it's still right. The warehouse fell quiet again. Outside, the sound of traffic on the BQE hummed like distant machinery. Inside, 20 men tried to decide whether to follow a leader into a war they couldn't win or abandon him and save themselves. Finally, an older man stepped forward. Vincent Russo. Had worked with Damien's father since the beginning, back when they were running small operations out of Brooklyn social clubs. Gray hair, scarred hands, eyes that had seen things that would break most people. Your father told me something once, Vincent said. Night before he died. We were drinking, talking about old times. He said the hardest thing about this life wasn't the violence, wasn't the danger. It was knowing that every choice you make, someone pays for it. Every deal you cut, someone gets hurt. Every compromise you accept, you lose a piece of yourself. And eventually, you look in the mirror and don't recognize the man looking back. He paused, looked around at the other men. He said if he could do it over, he'd do one thing different. He'd keep his promises, all of them, even the ones that cost him everything. Because at the end, that's all you really have, your word. Everything else is just noise. Vincent turned to Damien. So if you're saying you're keeping your father's promise, then I'm with you, whatever that means. 3 other men nodded, then 2 more. Then Marcus stepped forward. I'm in, Marcus said. But 12 men stayed silent. 12 men who did the math and didn't like the odds. Tony Salvatore looked at Damien for a long moment, something like regret crossing his face. Then he shook his head. I can't do this, Tony said. I got a family, kids in college. I've spent 30 years building something, and I'm not throwing it away because you want to play hero. I'm sorry, Damien, but I'm out. He walked toward the door. 6 others followed. Damien watched them go, felt something heavy settle in his chest. Half his organization, gone. Just like that. The door slammed shut. The remaining men stood in the sudden quiet, looking at each other, at Damien, at the impossible situation they'd just volunteered for. Okay, Damien said finally, now we know who we have. Marcus, I need you to start moving assets, cash, weapons, anything that's not tied down. Assume Mercer's people will freeze accounts and raid properties within 48 hours. Vincent, I need secure locations. Multiple safe houses, different neighborhoods. We're going underground. What about Elias Ward? Vincent asked. I'm bringing him in. Him and his granddaughter. They're our responsibility now. And the evidence? Damien pulled out the flash drive. I'm taking this to the FBI tomorrow morning. Multiple copies to multiple agencies. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Marcus stepped closer. Boss, once you hand that over, there's no taking it back. Mercer will know it came from you. He'll come at us with everything he's got. I know. And you're ready for that? Damien thought about his father, about Celine standing in his restaurant with wine running down her face, about Vivian's voice on the phone saying the truth doesn't matter. No, he said honestly, but I'm doing it anyway. The men dispersed, moving with purpose now, the decision made. Damien stayed behind with Marcus, both of them staring at the empty warehouse like it was a grave they'd just dug. This is really happening, Marcus said. Yeah, we're really going to war with a United States senator. Looks like it. Your father would think we're insane. My father did the same thing, just never finished it. Marcus laughed, a tired, broken sound. He didn't finish it because he knew how it ends. People like Mercer don't go down easy. They take everyone with them. Then we better make sure we're still standing when the smoke clears. Damien's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Vale. Celine's voice. Calm. Controlled. Nothing like the waitress who'd poured his wine 24 hours ago. My grandfather tells me you've made your choice. I have. And? I'm keeping my father's promise, which means you're my responsibility now, both of you. A pause. We don't need protection. Yeah, you do. Mercer knows you're alive. He knows what you have. Within 24 hours, every cop, every federal agent, every contractor on his payroll will be looking for you. You're not safe anywhere. We've been hiding for 22 years. That was before. This is now. Things have changed. Another pause, then. Where do you want us? I'll send Marcus with a location. Be ready to move in 1 hour. Mr. Vale? Yeah? Thank you for keeping your word. She hung up before he could respond. Damien stood holding the phone, feeling the weight of what he'd just committed to. He'd chosen a side, declared war, set in motion events that would either expose massive corruption or get everyone he cared about killed. No middle ground, no negotiation, no way back. Marcus was watching him. You okay? No, but ask me again after we survive this. And if we don't? Then at least we went down keeping our promises. They walked out of the warehouse together into the Brooklyn night, leaving the empty space behind like a memorial to the organization that used to be. Somewhere across the river, Manhattan glowed against the darkness, a city of millions, unaware that beneath their feet, Old wars were waking up, and new ones were being born. And in a luxury townhouse on the Upper East Side, Senator Richard Mercer received a phone call from his daughter and learned that the past he'd spent decades burying was about to claw its way into the light. The hunt was beginning, and nobody was walking away without blood on their hands. Marcus drove through Brooklyn like the city was trying to swallow them. Every headlight felt like surveillance. Every dark sedan could be federal agents or Mercer's contractors. The SUV's windows were tinted dark enough to be illegal, bulletproof glass that made the world outside look like it was underwater. Celine and Elias sat in the back seat, grandfather and granddaughter pressed together in silence. She looked different without the waitress uniform. Black jeans, dark hoodie, hair pulled back tight. Combat boots. The kind of outfit you wore when you expected to run or fight and didn't care which came first. Elias looked smaller in civilian clothes, frailer, like a man who'd spent too many years looking over his shoulder and was finally too tired to keep turning around. Damien sat in the passenger seat watching them in the rearview mirror. Celine's eyes met his. Green and unreadable. She didn't look grateful, didn't look scared, just looked like someone who'd been waiting her entire life for this moment and wasn't sure whether to be relieved or terrified that it was finally here. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Safe house in Sunset Park," Marcus answered. "Secure location. Nobody knows about it except us. Nobody except the 12 guys who just walked out on you." Marcus's jaw tightened. "They won't talk." "You sure about that?" "They're smart enough to know that talking gets them killed, too." Celine didn't argue, but Damien saw doubt flicker across her face. She was right to doubt. Loyalty was a myth in this world. People stayed loyal until the cost got too high. Then they made new arrangements and told themselves it was pragmatism. His phone buzzed. Catherine Reese. He let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, she called again. This time he answered. "I told you to bring it in tonight," Catherine said without preamble. "It's almost midnight. Where are you?" "Moving people, securing assets." "That sounds like you're preparing for war." "That's because I am." "Jesus Christ, Vale, what did you get yourself into?" "Something bigger than both of us. I'll bring the evidence tomorrow morning, first thing. Tomorrow might be too late. I've been hearing chatter. Federal prosecutors asking questions about corruption investigations from 20 years ago. Old cases being reopened, someone's rattling cages, and people are getting nervous. Good. They should be nervous. Not good. Nervous people do desperate things. If Mercer knows you have evidence, he knows. Silence. Then Catherine's voice dropped an octave. "You told him?" "His daughter figured it out, which means he knows everything. Then you need protection, federal custody, witness protection for anyone connected to this. Bring them in right now." "Can't do that." "Why the hell not?" "Because I don't know who to trust in the federal system. If Mercer's been buying judges and prosecutors for 30 years, how do I know he doesn't own people in your office too?" Catherine was quiet for a long moment. "You don't, but you're out of options. Either you trust someone or you're dead before sunrise." "I trust you. That's not enough. I'm one agent. I can't protect you against a coordinated attack. Then I'll protect myself." "With what? 8 guys and some guns? Mercer has resources you can't imagine. Private contractors, corrupt cops, federal agents who owe him favors. He'll hit you from every direction at once, and you won't see it coming until it's too late." Damien looked at Celine in the mirror again. She was watching him, listening to every word, her expression unreadable. "I'll take my chances." "Don't be stupid." "Too late for that. I made my choice." He hung up before Catherine could argue. Marcus glanced over. "She's right, you know. We're exposed, vulnerable. If Mercer moves tonight, he won't move tonight. He'll wait until morning. Let us think we have time, then hit us when we're tired and off guard." "How do you know?" Because that's what my father would do. And Mercer learned from the same playbook." They pulled up outside a 3-story brownstone in Sunset Park. Lights off, no cars parked nearby. Marcus killed the engine and sat in darkness for 30 seconds, watching the street. Nothing moved. No shadows in windows. No curtains twitching. Just another quiet block in a neighborhood full of families who worked hard and minded their own business. Marcus got out first, checked the perimeter, then waved them forward. They moved quickly, Elias struggling to keep pace, Celine supporting him with one arm while her other hand stayed inside her hoodie pocket. Gun, probably. Damien noticed the way she moved, weight balanced on the balls of her feet, eyes tracking every angle. She'd been trained. By someone good. Inside the safe house was Spartan, furniture that came with the rental, bare walls, nothing personal anywhere. Marcus had stocked it yesterday with food, weapons, burner phones, survival basics, the kind of place you could abandon in 30 seconds if things went bad. Elias collapsed into a chair, breathing hard. His face had gone gray. Celine knelt beside him, checking his pulse, her expression tight with worry. "He needs a doctor," she said. "Can't risk it," Marcus replied. "Doctors ask questions. Questions lead to records. Records lead to Mercer. He has a heart condition. If he doesn't get his medication..." "What medication?" Celine rattled off a name Damien didn't recognize. Marcus pulled out his phone, started typing. "I'll have someone pick it up. Cash purchase, fake name. We'll have it in 2 hours." "He might not have 2 hours. Then we better hope he's tougher than he looks." Celine's eyes flashed with anger, but she swallowed it, turned back to her grandfather. Elias reached up, touched her face with a shaking hand. "I'm fine," he said. His voice sounded like gravel scraping concrete. "Just tired. Been tired for 22 years. "Don't talk like that." "Like what? Like a man who knows he's dying?" He smiled slightly. "We're all dying, sweetheart. Some of us just faster than others." Damien watched them, feeling like an intruder. This wasn't his family, wasn't his grief. But he'd made it his responsibility, and responsibility didn't care about comfort. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from a number he didn't recognize. "You made a mistake." Nothing else. No signature. No context. Just those 4 words. He showed it to Marcus. "Trace it." Marcus was already working. "Burner phone, activated 3 hours ago. Pinged off a tower in Midtown. Could be anyone." "It's Mercer." "You don't know that." "Who else would it be?" Another text came through while they were talking. "Your father understood how this works. You don't." Damien felt ice spread through his chest. He typed back, "Then teach me." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "Meet me. 1 hour. Chelsea Piers. Come alone, or people you care about start dying." Marcus read over his shoulder. "That's a trap." "Obviously." "So we're not going." Damien didn't answer, just stared at the message, at the threat barely hidden beneath polite words. People you care about. Vivian? Marcus? The men who'd stayed loyal? Or someone else, someone Damien hadn't even thought to protect yet? "Boss," Marcus said carefully, "you can't seriously be considering this." "What choice do I have?" "We fortify here. Wait for morning, hand the evidence to the FBI and let them handle it. And in the meantime, Mercer kills everyone connected to me as a message. Everyone who helped me. Everyone who stayed loyal." "So you walk into a trap instead. That's not strategy. That's suicide." Damien looked at Celine like she'd been listening, her expression unreadable. "What would you do?" he asked. She didn't hesitate. "I'd go, but not alone. And not unarmed." He said, "Come alone." He also said people you care about will die. He's already lying. Why should you play by his rules? It was the first thing she'd said that sounded remotely like approval. Damien felt something shift between them. Not trust exactly, but recognition. They were the same kind of person. The kind who kept promises even when keeping them meant walking into fire. "Marcus, you stay here with Elias," Damien said. "Get him that medication. Keep him alive." "And you?" "I'm going to Chelsea Piers." "This is insane." "Yeah, but it's also necessary." He grabbed a gun from the duffel bag Marcus had brought. Glock 19, loaded, safety off. Checked the chamber, holstered it, started toward the door. "Wait." Celine stood up. "I'm coming with you." "No." "That wasn't a request. You're staying here with your grandfather. He needs you. He needs his medication, and he needs me alive. Which means I need to know what Mercer's planning. Because if you walk into that meeting and don't come back, we're next. So either I come with you or I follow you anyway. Your choice." Damien studied her face, saw the determination there, the kind that didn't bend or break no matter how much pressure you applied. She meant it. She'd follow him whether he wanted her to or not. Fine, but you stay in the car, no matter what happens. We'll see. They took Marcus's SUV, left him with Elias and a phone to call for backup if things went sideways. The drive to Chelsea Piers took 20 minutes through empty streets, the city quieter than Damien had ever seen it, like New York was holding its breath, waiting to see what happened next. Celine sat in the passenger seat cleaning her gun, a compact 9mm, well-maintained, the kind of weapon someone carried when they knew how to use it. "Where'd you learn to shoot?" Damien asked. "My grandfather. He taught me everything. How to disappear, how to fight, how to survive." "He raised you?" "After my mother died, yeah. It was just us. Moving every few years, new names, new schools, never staying anywhere long enough to make friends or leave traces. That's a hard childhood. It kept us alive." They drove in silence for a while. Then Celine said quietly, "Why are you doing this? You could have handed us over to Mercer, made peace, kept your empire intact." "My father made a promise." "Your father's dead. Promises die with people. Not this one." "Why not?" Damien thought about his father's funeral, about standing in front of a coffin, watching powerful men pretend to mourn while calculating how to fill the power vacuum. Thought about inheriting an empire he never asked for and spending 3 years trying to live up to a legacy he didn't understand. "Because I want to know if I'm like him," Damien said finally. "My father kept secrets, made decisions I'll never understand, protected people at tremendous cost. I need to know if that meant something, if he was building towards something worth protecting, or if it was all just survival dressed up as loyalty." Celine was quiet. Then, "And if you find out he was just surviving? Then at least I'll know the truth. That's more than I have now." They pulled into Chelsea Piers, a massive complex on the Hudson River, sports facilities and restaurants and piers stretching out over the water. At 1 a.m., everything was closed. Parking lot empty except for 3 black sedans clustered near Pier 60. Floodlights throwing harsh shadows across concrete. The water beyond looked black and infinite. Damien parked 50 yards away, killed the engine, studied the setup. 3 cars. Maybe 12 men total, probably more hidden in the shadows. Professional arrangement. Overlapping fields of fire. No escape routes except back the way they came. "That's a kill box," Celine said. "Yeah." "You still going?" "Yeah." "You're insane." "So I've been told." He checked his gun one more time. Celine grabbed his arm before he could open the door. "If this goes bad," she said, "if they kill you, I'm finishing it. The evidence goes public no matter what. Mercer doesn't get to win." "Noted." "I'm serious." "I know you are. That's why I'm trusting you." He got out before she could respond. The night air hit him like a slap, cold, damp, smelling like river water and diesel fuel. His footsteps echoed across empty concrete as he walked toward the 3 cars. Somewhere behind him, he heard Celine's door open, heard her footsteps following at a distance. He told her to stay in the car. She'd ignored him. Good. He'd have done the same thing. As he got closer, a door opened on the center sedan. A man stepped out. Not Mercer. Someone else. Tall, broad-shouldered, expensive suit that didn't hide the gun under his jacket. Professional security. The kind that had worked protection details for politicians and warlords. "Mr. Vale," the man said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "The senator is waiting." "Where?" The man gestured toward the pier stretching out over the Hudson. At the far end, Damien could see a figure silhouetted against floodlights, standing alone, hands in pockets, looking out at the water like he was admiring the view. "He wants to talk," the man continued. "Just talk. No violence, no threats, just 2 reasonable people having a conversation." "Why should I believe that?" "Because if the senator wanted you dead, you'd already be dead." "Fair point." Damien walked past the security guard, past the 3 cars, onto the pier. His footsteps echoed on the wooden planks. Water lapped beneath him, dark and cold. Behind him, he heard movement, other men emerging from shadows, taking positions, creating a perimeter, trapping him. Senator Richard Mercer turned around as Damien approached. He looked exactly like his photographs. Silver hair, sharp features, the The kind of face that belonged on campaign posters and Sunday morning news shows. Distinguished, trustworthy, completely artificial. "Damien," Mercer said warmly, like they were old friends meeting for drinks. "Thank you for coming. You didn't give me much choice." "No, I suppose I didn't," Mercer smiled. "Your father and I had an arrangement, a mutually beneficial relationship that served both our interests for many years. I'd like to continue that arrangement with you." "Not interested." "You should be, because the alternative is very unpleasant for everyone involved." Damien stopped 10 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to react if Mercer's security moved. "What do you want?" "Elias Ward, and the evidence he's been collecting." "Can't help you. Can't or won't?" "Both." Mercer sighed like Damien was a disappointing student who'd failed to grasp a simple concept. "Let me explain something about power, son. Real power isn't about violence or intimidation. It's about systems, infrastructure, the invisible frameworks that determine who succeeds and who fails. I've spent 30 years building those frameworks, creating networks of influence that span federal, state, and local government. That kind of power doesn't collapse because one old man decides to play hero. Then why are you so worried about him?" "I'm not worried. I'm being thorough. Elias has evidence that could create temporary embarrassment. Investigations. Headlines. But nothing that would actually threaten the foundations I've built. The judges investigating me? I appointed half of them. The prosecutors who'd bring charges? They owe their careers to me. The federal agents who'd arrest me? Many of them have received generous campaign contributions over the years. You're saying you're untouchable. I'm saying the system protects itself, and I am the system." Damien felt something cold settle in his stomach. Because Mercer wasn't bluffing, wasn't exaggerating. He believed every word he was saying with the absolute certainty of someone who'd never faced consequences for anything. "So why meet me?" Damien asked. "If you're so untouchable, why bother?" "Because I liked your father. We had an understanding, and I'd like to offer you the same arrangement. Give me Elias Ward. Give me the evidence. In return, I'll ensure your organization continues operating without federal interference. No investigations, no raids, no uncomfortable questions about your business practices. You'll have the same protection your father enjoyed. And if I refuse," Mercer's smile never wavered, "then I dismantle everything, your operations, your assets, your people, one by one, systematically, until there's nothing left but memories and regrets." "You'd start a war." "No, I'd end one, quickly and decisively. You don't have the resources to fight me, Damien. You don't have the connections. You don't have the institutional support. What you have is 8 loyal men, a few safe houses, and a moral conviction that means absolutely nothing in the real world." Damien's hand moved toward his gun. Instantly, red laser dots appeared on his chest. 3 of them, maybe more. Snipers positioned around the pier. He froze. "Don't," Mercer said calmly. "This doesn't have to end badly. Give me what I want and everyone walks away. Continue being stubborn and people start dying. Your choice." "Go to hell." I expected that response. Your father would have said the same thing, at first. Then he'd calculate the odds, realize he was beaten, and make the pragmatic choice. Mercer stepped closer. "But you're not your father, are you? You're younger, more idealistic. Still believe that righteousness matters more than results. That's going to get you killed." "Maybe, but at least I'll die knowing I kept my word." "Noble. Stupid, but noble." Mercer pulled out his phone, typed something, then turned the screen toward Damien. A photograph. Marcus's SUV. Celine visible through the windshield, gun in hand, watching the pier. "Your associate," Mercer said. "Elias Ward's granddaughter. Quite the fighter, from what I understand. Spent 11 months working in your restaurant, waiting for the perfect moment to contact you. Impressive patience. Impressive discipline. It would be a shame if something happened to her." Damien's blood went cold. "Touch her and what? You'll shoot me? My security would kill you before your hand reached your gun. You'll report me? To whom? The police I control? The FBI agents on my payroll? The prosecutors who owe their careers to me?" Mercer pocketed his phone. "You have no leverage, Damien. No options. No way out. The only choice you have is whether people die quickly or slowly. Behind Mercer, the security guard raised his hand. A signal. From the shadows near the parking lot, Damien heard a car door open, heard Celine shout something, then gunfire. 3 shots, quick succession, then silence. Damien lunged forward. Laser sights tracked him. Mercer raised a hand, stopping his security from shooting. "That was a warning," Mercer said. "Next time it won't be. Bring me Elias Ward by sunrise. Bring me the evidence, or everyone you've ever cared about dies screaming." Damien turned and ran, sprinted across the pier, past the security guards toward the parking lot. His heart hammered against his ribs. His breath came in ragged gasps. Behind him, Mercer's voice called out, "6 hours, Damien. Choose wisely." He reached the SUV. The driver's side window was shattered, glass everywhere. But Celine was gone. No blood, no body, just broken glass and an empty seat. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "We have her. You have until sunrise." Damien stood in the parking lot, glass crunching under his feet, staring at the message while his entire world collapsed into a single, crystalline point of failure. He'd walked into a trap, just like Marcus warned, just like he knew would happen. And now Celine was gone, taken by Mercer's people, held hostage against his cooperation. He'd made the choice, kept his father's promise, declared war on a senator, and in less than an hour, he'd lost everything. Marcus was pacing when Damien returned to the safe house. Elias sat in the same chair, looking grayer, breathing shallower. The medication hadn't arrived yet. Might not arrive at all if Marcus's contact had been compromised. "What happened?" Marcus demanded. "I heard gunshots on the police scanner. Chelsea Piers, that was you?" "They took Celine." The words fell like stones. Marcus stopped pacing. Elias's eyes snapped open, suddenly alert despite his weakened state. "What do you mean they took her?" Elias asked. His voice was stronger now, anger burning through exhaustion. "Mercer had people positioned around the meeting. They grabbed her while I was talking to him, used her as leverage." "Leverage for what?" "For you, and the evidence. I give him both by sunrise or she dies." Elias stood up, swaying slightly. "Then give it to him." "What?" "Give him what he wants, the evidence, me, all of it. Just get her back. That defeats the entire purpose. If we hand over the evidence, Mercer destroys it. You die. And everything you've spent 22 years protecting means nothing." "I don't care about the evidence. I care about my granddaughter. She knew the risks. She volunteered for this. She's 28 years old. She's my family. She's all I have left." Damien felt something crack inside him. The old man's grief was raw, desperate, the kind that made people do stupid things. Damien understood it, felt it himself, but understanding didn't change the math. "If we give Mercer what he wants, Celine dies anyway," Damien said quietly. "Along with everyone else. He can't afford witnesses, can't afford loose ends. The moment he has the evidence, he kills us all." "Then what do you suggest?" "We stick to the plan. Get the evidence to the FBI, multiple agencies. Make it public before Mercer can suppress it. Once it's out, once people know, he loses his leverage." "And Celine?" Damien didn't answer, because there was no good answer. Every scenario ended with someone dying. The only question was how many and how quickly. Elias collapsed back into the chair. "This is my fault. I should have sent her away. Should have done this alone." "You couldn't have done this alone. You needed someone on the inside, someone Mercer wouldn't suspect. And now she's going to die because I was too much of a coward to face him myself." "She's not dead yet." "But she will be, unless we give him what he wants." "We can't." Can't or won't? The question hung between them. Damien thought about Celine standing in his restaurant with wine running down her face, whispering a dead man's name. Thought about her in the car, cleaning her gun, asking why he was doing this. Thought about the way she'd looked at him. Not with trust exactly, but with understanding. Two people keeping promises their fathers couldn't. His phone buzzed. Catherine Reese. "I heard about Chelsea Piers," she said immediately. "Are you hurt?" "No, but they took someone. Elias Ward's granddaughter." "Christ, Damien, you need to bring in the evidence right now, tonight. If Mercer's already moving against you..." "I can't. Not until I get her back." "You're not getting her back. Not alive. Mercer doesn't leave witnesses. You know that." "Then what do I do?" Catherine was quiet for a moment. You make the hard choice. You bring me the evidence. We go public. We burn Mercer's entire network before he can suppress it. And you hope that Celine Ward's death means something. That's it? Just sacrifice her? You're already sacrificing her by waiting. Every hour you delay gives Mercer time to consolidate, to destroy evidence, to eliminate anyone who might testify. If you want her death to matter, make it count towards something bigger. Damien closed his eyes, felt the weight of it, the impossible calculus of war where people became numbers and numbers became acceptable losses. I'll call you back, he said. Damien? He hung up, looked at Marcus, at Elias, at two men who'd lost too much already and were about to lose more. We're moving, Damien said. Grab what you can carry. We've got maybe 3 hours before Mercer's people track us here. Where are we going? Marcus asked. FBI field office, Lower Manhattan. We're delivering the evidence tonight. What about Celine? Damien pulled out the flash drive, held it up to the light. Such a small thing, barely any weight, but carrying information that could expose decades of corruption, topple politicians, unravel networks that had operated in shadows for generations. And on the other side of the equation, one woman's life. She knew what she was signing up for, Damien said. She made her choice, so you're just abandoning her? I'm finishing what she started. That's what she'd want. Elias made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. You don't know what she'd want. You've known her for 2 days. Long enough to know she wouldn't want her death to be meaningless. Long enough to know she'd want the evidence published even if it costs her everything. You're guessing. You're making assumptions because it's convenient, because it lets you live with yourself. Maybe. But it's the only play we have. Damien's phone buzzed again. Another text. This time with an attached video. He opened it with shaking hands. The video showed Celine tied to a chair in a concrete room. Blood ran from her nose. Her left eye was swelling shut, but her expression was defiant, furious, absolutely unbroken. A voice off camera. Last chance, Mr. Vale, the evidence in Elias Ward, or we start removing pieces. The video ended. Damien stared at the screen at Celine's face frozen in rage and pain. Thought about promises. Thought about loyalty. Thought about the kind of man his father had been and the kind of man Damien was becoming. Then he made the choice. Marcus, get the car. We're going to get her. What? No, that's exactly what they want. It's a trap. I know. They'll kill you both. Probably, but I'm not leaving her. Boss, think about this. If you walk into that trap, if they kill you and take the evidence, then Mercer wins. Everything we've done, everything we've risked, it all means nothing. It means nothing if we abandon her. That's not how war works. Then maybe I'm fighting the wrong war. Damien grabbed the duffel bag of weapons, threw it over his shoulder. Elias was watching him with something like hope mixed with despair. You're really going after her? Elias asked. Yeah. Why? Because my father spent 22 years keeping a promise to you. Because Celine risked everything to expose the truth. Because if I walk away from her now, then every word I said about keeping promises is a lie. You'll die. Maybe. But I'll die knowing I tried. Damien walked toward the door. Marcus blocked his path. If you do this, Marcus said quietly, if you walk into that trap, I'm coming with you. No, you're staying here with Elias, getting him and the evidence to the FBI. Not happening. That's an order. I don't work for you anymore. You just committed suicide. I'm not letting you do it alone. They stared at each other, two men who'd been through too much together to pretend this was just business. Finally, Damien nodded. Then we both go. Elias stays here. Vincent's people are watching the building. They'll extract him if things go bad. And the evidence? Damien pulled out the flash drive, pressed it into Elias's hand. If we're not back in 2 hours, you call Catherine Reese. Give her everything. Make sure it goes public. Elias closed his fingers around the drive, nodded once. Damien and Marcus walked out into the pre-dawn darkness. The sky was starting to lighten in the east. Not sunrise yet, but close. They had maybe 90 minutes before Mercer's deadline. 90 minutes to find Celine, extract her, and somehow survive long enough to get the evidence published. The odds were impossible. The plan was non-existent, but Damien had made his choice. and he was keeping his promise even if it killed him. They got in the SUV. Marcus drove fast through empty streets, heading toward the coordinates Mercer's people had sent. A warehouse complex in Red Hook, ironically close to the safe house where this had all started. "You know this is insane," Marcus said. "Yeah." "We're driving into a kill box with no backup and no plan." "Yeah." "And you're okay with that?" Damien thought about his father's funeral, about standing in front of that coffin wondering if he'd ever understand the man who'd raised him. Thought about 3 years of running an empire he never wanted, making compromises he hated, becoming someone he didn't recognize. Maybe this was how you found yourself. Not through victory or success, but through the choices you made when everything was falling apart, and the only thing left was deciding what you stood for. "Yeah," Damien said. "I'm okay with it." They pulled up outside the warehouse complex. 5 buildings clustered together, loading docks and rusted fences, the kind of place that had been abandoned so long everyone forgot it existed, perfect for an execution. Marcus killed the engine. They sat in silence for a moment, checking weapons, preparing for what came next. "For what it's worth," Marcus said quietly, "your father would be proud." "No, he wouldn't. He'd think I was an idiot." "Probably, but he'd also understand why you're doing it." They got out, walked toward the warehouse complex through gray morning light, 2 men against an army, knowing they were probably walking toward their deaths. The door stood open, waiting. Damien stepped inside, and everything went to hell. The gunfire started before Damien's eyes adjusted to the darkness. Muzzle flashes lit up the warehouse interior like lightning, white-hot bursts that turned shadows into monsters and back again. Damien hit the concrete floor as bullets chewed through the doorframe behind him, splinters and dust exploding into the air. Marcus was already moving, rolling behind a steel support beam, returning fire with controlled bursts that echoed like thunder in the enclosed space. Damien's ears rang. His heart slammed against his ribs so hard it hurt. He could taste copper, blood from where he'd bitten his tongue hitting the ground. 3 shooters, maybe 4, positioned in elevated positions around the warehouse. Professional setup, overlapping fields of fire. They'd known exactly when Damien would arrive and exactly where he'd enter. Of course they had. This was never a rescue. It was an execution with extra steps. "Move!" Marcus shouted. Damien scrambled forward, staying low, using machinery and crates for cover. More gunfire tracked him, bullets sparking off metal, punching through wood, the sound so loud it felt like his skull was cracking apart. He fired back blindly, didn't care if he hit anything, just needed to make them hesitate for 3 seconds while he found better cover. His shoulder slammed into a concrete pillar, pain shot down his arm. He ignored it, pressed his back against the pillar, tried to slow his breathing enough to think. The warehouse was massive, 50,000 square feet at least, filled with abandoned machinery and shipping containers and shadows that could hide an army. Marcus appeared beside him, breathing hard, blood running from a cut above his eye. 4 shooters, 2 on the catwalks, 2 ground level. They're trying to pin us against the back wall. "Where's Celine?" "Didn't see her." "Then we keep moving." They pushed deeper into the warehouse, using containers for cover, moving fast and low. Damien's training kicked in, the hours his father had made him spend on shooting ranges, in sparring matches, learning how to move under fire. Muscle memory older than conscious thought. His body knew what to do, even when his mind was screaming that this was insane. More gunfire, closer now. A bullet grazed Damien's jacket, so close he felt the heat. He dropped, rolled, came up firing, saw one of the shooters on the ground level, big guy in tactical gear, professional stance. Damien's first shot went wide. Second caught the man in the shoulder, spun him around. Third dropped him. No time to process it. No time to feel anything. Just keep moving. They reached a cluster of shipping containers stacked 3 high. Marcus checked the first one. Empty, except for some rotted pallets. Second one was locked. Third stood open, and inside, Celine. She was tied to a chair in the center of the container, hands bound behind her back, face swollen and bloody. But her eyes were alert, tracking their movement. When she saw Damien, something flickered across her face. Not relief. Something harder. Like she'd known he'd come and was simultaneously grateful and furious about it. "Trap," she croaked. Her voice was raw, damaged. "It's a trap. They wanted you." The explosion cut her off. The shipping container next to them detonated with a sound like the world ending. The blast wave picked Damien up and threw him backward through the air. He hit something hard, steel, concrete, didn't matter. All the air left his lungs. His vision went white, then red, then black at the edges. His ears screamed with a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything else. He couldn't breathe, couldn't see, couldn't hear anything except that endless ringing. Move. He had to move. They'd planned this. The explosion was meant to disorient them, maybe kill them outright. Now shooters would be closing in to finish the job. Damien forced himself to his hands and knees. His arms shook. Blood ran down his face from somewhere. The warehouse spun around him like a carousel. Through the smoke and dust, he saw Marcus, alive but not moving, sprawled against a container wall, blood spreading across his chest. No, not Marcus, not like this. Damien crawled toward him. Every movement felt like his body was tearing apart. His ribs screamed. Something in his left arm wasn't working right. Didn't matter. He reached Marcus, pressed his hand against the chest wound. Blood pulsed between his fingers. Too much blood. Marcus's eyes opened, focused on Damien with effort. "Celine," Marcus whispered. "Get her. Go." "Not leaving you." "Not asking. Telling you." Marcus coughed. More blood. "Get her out. Finish it." "Marcus, go." Footsteps. Running. Coming closer. Damien grabbed his gun, had to search for it, couldn't remember dropping it, and forced himself upright. His legs barely held him. The world tilted at wrong angles, but he stayed standing through sheer, stubborn refusal to fall. The shipping container where Celine had been was twisted wreckage now, the blast having torn through its side. Inside, Celine was struggling against her bonds, the chair tipped over. She was screaming something Damien couldn't hear through the ringing in his ears. He stumbled into the container, pulled out his knife, started sawing through the ropes binding her wrists. His hand shook so badly he nearly cut her twice. "They're coming," Celine was saying. He could see her mouth moving, could barely hear the words. "Right behind you. We have to—" Gunfire. Not from outside. From inside the container. Celine had freed one hand, grabbed the gun from Damien's holster. When had she done that? And fired past his shoulder. Damien turned, saw two men in the container entrance. One dropped. The other returned fire. Bullets punched through the metal walls around them, daylight streaming through the holes. Damien fired. Celine fired. The second man fell. Then silence. Relative silence. The ringing in Damien's ears was fading to a dull roar. He could hear again. Breathing. Footsteps. Celine cutting the ropes around her ankles with his knife. "Can you walk?" Damien asked. She stood up, swayed, caught herself against the container wall. Her face was a mask of blood and defiance. "I can run if I have to. Where's the exit?" "No exit. Not yet. We need to—" The voice that cut him off came from speakers mounted around the warehouse. Amplified. Calm. Utterly reasonable. "That was impressive, Mr. Vale." "Senator Mercer. I'll admit I didn't expect you to make it this far. Most people would have died in that explosion. But you're your father's son after all, tougher than you look." Damien and Celine moved to the container entrance, looked out at the warehouse. Bodies on the ground. Smoke drifting through shafts of morning light coming through broken skylights. And there, on a catwalk 30 feet up, Senator Richard Mercer standing like he was surveying his kingdom. "Let's end this," Mercer continued. "You want the girl. I want Elias Ward and the evidence. Simple trade. Nobody else has to die." "He's lying," Celine said. "The moment we tell him where my grandfather is—" I know." Damien studied the warehouse layout. 8 more men visible, all armed, all positioned around the perimeter. Mercer's security detail. No way to fight through that many professionals. No way to reach the senator before they cut him down. But Marcus was bleeding out behind them, and more of Mercer's people were probably on their way. They were out of time and out of options. "What do you want me to say?" Damien called up to Mercer. "I want you to be smart. Your father was smart. He knew when to fight and when to negotiate. Right now, negotiating is your only play. My father hid Elias Ward for 22 years. That doesn't sound like negotiation. Your father made a calculated decision. He protected Ward because Ward had evidence that could hurt me. But your father also understood that evidence was worthless without someone willing to publish it. And nobody was willing then. Times were different. People were more easily silenced. And now? Now, things are complicated. The internet, social media, whistleblower laws. It's harder to control information than it used to be, but not impossible. Give me the evidence, give me Ward, and I can still contain this. Make it go away, and in return, you walk out of here alive. Celine grabbed Damien's arm. Don't listen to him. I'm not. Then what are you doing? Buying time. He called back to Mercer. How do I know you'll keep your word? You don't, but you're out of options. Your organization is fractured. Half your men abandoned you. The other half are hiding in safe houses waiting to see who wins. You have no leverage, no backup, no way out. All you have is my willingness to let you live if you cooperate. And if I don't cooperate, then I kill you here. Kill the girl. Kill Elias Ward. And the evidence disappears along with everyone who knew about it. 3 bodies, 3 funerals, 3 closed caskets. The world moves on. Damien's mind raced. Mercer was right about most of it. They were trapped, outgunned, no backup coming. But Mercer was wrong about one thing. The evidence wasn't here. Elias still had the flash drive. And if Damien and Celine didn't make it back, Elias would deliver it to the FBI just like they'd agreed, which meant Mercer's entire play depended on capturing them alive, torturing the location out of them, and killing Elias before he could go public. Time. That was the variable. How much time did Elias have? How long before Mercer's people found the safe house? Damien's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out with shaking hands. Text from Vincent Russo. FBI just pulled up to your safe house. Reese and a team. They're extracting Elias now. Damien felt something cold and bright flood through his chest. Relief, terror, hope. Catherine Reese had moved faster than he'd expected. Must have traced his calls. Must have decided to act without waiting for him to bring the evidence in, which meant Elias was safe. Which meant the evidence was safe. Which meant Damien and Celine were now completely expendable. Mercer would kill them the moment he realized they couldn't give him what he wanted. Damien? Celine was watching his face. What is it? He showed her the phone, watched her read the message, watched her expression shift from fear to understanding. We're the distraction, she said quietly. Yeah. He doesn't need us alive anymore. No. She laughed, a short, bitter sound. Your father knew how this worked. He understood you had to be willing to be the sacrifice. Apparently, I take after him. That's not a compliment. I know. Up on the catwalk, Mercer's patience was running out. I'm waiting, Mr. Vale, and I'm not a patient man. Damien stepped out of the container into the open warehouse floor. Celine tried to grab him. He shook her off, walked into the center of the space, surrounded by armed men, looking up at a United States senator who'd built a career on corruption and murder. You want to know where Elias Ward is? Damien called out. I do. FBI custody, Lower Manhattan field office, along with all the evidence. It's already over. You just don't know it yet. Silence. Complete and total silence. Every man in the warehouse frozen, watching Mercer, waiting for his reaction. The senator's expression didn't change, didn't flicker, just stood there on the catwalk looking down at Damien like he was studying an interesting insect. Then Mercer started laughing. Not a forced laugh, not theatrical, real laughter, genuine and amused, echoing through the warehouse. You stupid, noble idiot, Mercer said. You actually did it. You actually kept your father's promise, even though you knew it would get you killed. Yeah. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. Mercer shook his head, still smiling. The right thing. You sound like Elena Ward. She believed in the right thing too, believed it all the way to her grave. Celine moved beside Damien. Her gun was up, pointed at Mercer. Her hands didn't shake. You killed my mother, she said. Her voice was steady, cold, absolutely certain. I gave an order. Someone else killed her. That's how power works. You keep your hands clean while other people do the wet work. Same thing. Not legally? Legally, I'm untouchable. The evidence you think will destroy me? It won't. I've spent 30 years insulating myself, building redundancies, creating deniability. The most that evidence will do is force some early retirements. A few scapegoats will take the fall, and I'll emerge with my reputation intact and my power doubled. You're lying. I'm being realistic. This isn't a movie, Ms. Ward. The bad guys don't always lose. Sometimes the system protects them. Sometimes corruption is so deep, so institutional, that exposing it changes nothing. People get angry for a week, headlines scream, then life goes on, and men like me continue doing what we've always done. Then I'll kill you myself. Mercer spread his arms. Go ahead, take the shot. Kill a United States senator in front of a dozen witnesses. Spend the rest of your life in prison. Become exactly what I'll tell the world you are. A terrorist. An extremist. A murderer. Celine's finger tightened on the trigger. Damien could see the war happening behind her eyes. Revenge versus justice. Emotion versus strategy. The choice between killing the man who'd murdered her mother and becoming a martyr for a cause that might not matter. Don't, Damien said quietly. Why not? Because he wants you to. Look around. His men aren't moving. They're not trying to stop you, because if you kill him, his story wins. He becomes the victim. You become the villain. Everything we did means nothing. I don't care. Yes, you do. Your mother cared about the truth, about exposing corruption, about making sure people knew what kind of man Mercer was. You kill him now, and you destroy her legacy. Celine's hands shook. The gun wavered. Tears ran down her bloody face, mixing with sweat and smoke. She looked young suddenly, vulnerable, the weight of 11 years of grief and rage threatening to crush her. I want him dead, she whispered. I know, but not like this. Behind them, Marcus made a sound, a groan, pain pushing through unconsciousness. Damien risked a glance back. Marcus was still breathing, still alive, but barely. When Damien looked back at Mercer, the senator was checking his watch. This has been enlightening, Mercer said, but I have a breakfast meeting with the Attorney General in 2 hours. So let's wrap this up. He nodded to his security team. Every gun in the warehouse pointed at Damien and Celine. I offered you a deal, Mercer continued. You refused. So now we do this the hard way. You die here. Your bodies get dumped in the river, and I spend the next 6 months managing the fallout from that evidence. It'll be annoying, expensive, but manageable. Because that's what I do. I manage problems. And you were a problem from the moment you decided to keep your father's promise. Damien looked at Celine, at her bloody face and defiant eyes, at the woman who'd spent 11 months infiltrating his life for this single moment. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For not being able to finish it. We did finish it. The evidence is out. My grandfather's safe. Whatever happens to us, we won. The gunshot cut her off. But it didn't come from Mercer's men. It came from behind them, from the shadows near the container where Marcus had fallen. Vincent Russo stepped out, rifle up, smoke curling from the barrel. On the catwalk, one of Mercer's bodyguards collapsed, a red hole in his forehead. Then the warehouse exploded with gunfire. Vincent wasn't alone. 8 men poured in from side entrances, the soldiers who'd stayed loyal, who'd chosen Damien over survival. They came in shooting, professional and coordinated, targeting Mercer's security team with brutal efficiency. Damien grabbed Celine, pulled her behind a concrete pillar as bullets filled the air where they'd been standing. Return fire from Mercer's men. Muzzle flashes turning the warehouse into a strobe light. The sound so loud, Damien's already damaged ears couldn't process it, just felt it like repeated punches to his skull. He fired around the pillar, didn't aim, didn't think, just pulled the trigger until the magazine ran dry. Celine was beside him doing the same, her face transformed into something feral and furious. On the catwalk, Mercer was running. His remaining bodyguards formed a protective circle, returning fire while retreating toward a rear exit. Vincent's shot had thrown the plan into chaos. Now it was just 2 groups of armed men trying to kill each other in an enclosed space while the target escaped. We're losing him, Celine shouted. She broke from cover, sprinting toward the stairs leading up to the catwalk. Damien swore, followed her. Bullets tracked them. Something tugged at Damien's jacket. Another round sparked off the metal stairs inches from his foot. He kept climbing, legs burning, chest heaving, Marcus's blood still sticky on his hands. They reached the catwalk. Mercer was 60 feet away, surrounded by 3 bodyguards, almost to the exit. He looked back once, met Damien's eyes, smiled that same infuriating, confident smile. Then he was through the door and gone. Celine screamed in frustration, fired after him. Bullets punched through the door but hit nothing. The bodyguards returned fire, forcing her and Damien to take cover behind the catwalk railing. Below, the firefight was ending. Vincent's team had superior positioning and the element of surprise. Mercer's remaining men were dead or surrendering, but the warehouse looked like a war zone. Bodies, smoke, spent brass everywhere. And Marcus? Damien couldn't see him from here. Didn't know if he was alive or dead. Didn't have time to check because Mercer was escaping, and if he got away, if he reached his car and his lawyers and his connections, none of this would matter. Come on! Damien grabbed Celine's arm, pulled her toward the door Mercer had used. They burst through into morning sunlight so bright it hurt. A loading dock behind the warehouse. Empty, except for a black sedan peeling out, tires smoking, heading for the street. Damien ran. His body screamed at him to stop, to collapse, to give up. He ran anyway. Celine beside him, both of them chasing a car they couldn't possibly catch, running on pure stubborn refusal to let Mercer win. The sedan reached the street, started to turn. Then Vincent Russo's pickup truck T-boned it at 40 miles per hour. The crash sounded like the end of the world. Metal shrieking, glass exploding. The sedan's passenger side crumpled like paper. Vincent's truck kept pushing, drove the sedan 15 feet sideways before finally stopping in a cloud of steam and smoke. Damien and Celine reached the wreckage. Both vehicles were totaled. Vincent climbed out of his truck, blood running from a cut on his forehead but otherwise mobile. He had his rifle up, covering the sedan. The driver's door opened. One of Mercer's bodyguards fell out, unconscious or dead. Then the rear door opened and Senator Richard Mercer crawled out into the street. He was hurt, probably broken ribs from the impact. His expensive suit was torn and bloody. But he was alive and conscious, trying to stand, looking around for help that wasn't coming. Celine walked toward him, gun up, finger on the trigger. Mercer raised his hands. Wait, let's talk about... No more talking. She pulled the trigger. Click. Empty magazine. Mercer actually laughed, a pained, desperate sound. Even now, even at the end, you can't finish it. Celine threw the gun aside, pulled out a knife instead. The same knife she'd used to cut her ropes. She advanced on Mercer with murder in her eyes. Damien caught her arm. Celine, stop. Let go of me. You kill him now, you're a murderer. You kill him in front of witnesses, you go to prison. I don't care. Your mother would care. The words stopped her. She stood there shaking, the knife white-knuckle tight in her fist, her whole body vibrating with the need to hurt the man who'd taken everything from her. He deserves to die, she said through clenched teeth. Yeah, he does. But not like this. Not when we're this close to finishing it the right way. There is no right way. You heard him. The system protects people like him. The evidence won't matter. He'll walk away. Maybe. But we have to try. Sirens. Growing closer. Multiple vehicles. Vincent stepped beside them. FBI, he said. Called them before we hit the warehouse. They're coming for him. Celine looked at Mercer. This man who'd murdered her mother, corrupted an entire system, destroyed countless lives. This man who was about to be arrested by the very institutions he'd spent decades compromising. Slowly, she lowered the knife. If they let you walk, she said to Mercer, if the system protects you, if you get away with this, I'll find you, and next time there won't be anyone to stop me. Noted, Mercer said. Then he smiled. But you won't get the chance. I'll bury you. Bury your grandfather. Bury everyone connected to this. Even if the evidence goes public, even if I face charges, I have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers, connections. I'll tie this up in courts for years, and in the meantime, people who cross me tend to have accidents. Shut up, Damien said. Make me. Oh wait, you can't, because you chose the moral high ground. You chose to play by rules that don't apply to men like me. Your father would be so disappointed. Damien hit him, hard, right in the face. Mercer went down, blood exploding from his nose. The smug smile finally wiped away. The FBI vehicles screeched to a stop. 3 SUVs, doors flying open, agents pouring out with weapons drawn. Catherine Reese was first out, taking in the scene with wide eyes. Everyone on the ground, now! Damien, Celine, and Vincent complied. Hit the pavement, hands visible. Let the FBI agents swarm around them, shouting orders, securing the area. Damien's face was pressed against asphalt, still warm from the car crash. He could smell burned rubber and blood. Could hear Mercer coughing, probably choking on his own blood. Could feel the exhaustion creeping in now that the adrenaline was fading. Damien Vale? Catherine was standing over him. What the hell happened here? Senator Richard Mercer attempted to murder federal witnesses, Damien said. We defended ourselves. With what looks like a small army. Outnumbered, actually. You should see the warehouse. Catherine made a disgusted sound. Then, where's Elias Ward? Your people should have him by now. Safe house in Sunset Park. And the evidence. Flash drive containing 30 years of documentation on Mercer's corruption network. We have him, and we have preliminary copies of the evidence. If it's authentic, if it checks out... She paused. This is the biggest corruption case in 50 years. So arrest him. Catherine looked at Mercer, who was being helped to his feet by 2 agents. The senator was still smiling despite his broken nose, despite being surrounded by federal agents, despite the evidence that was about to destroy him. Because he still believed he'd win, because the system he'd built was designed to protect him. Because men like Richard Mercer always won. Unless... Catherine, Damien said quietly, the evidence. When does it go public? We have to verify it first. Authentication process. Could take weeks. Make it faster. Hours, today. Because if you wait, if you give him time to organize a defense, he'll bury it. You know he will. Catherine looked troubled. We have procedures, chain of custody, legal requirements. I can't just... Yes, you can. You're FBI. You have discretion. Use it. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she walked over to where other agents were talking to Mercer, reading him his rights while he smiled and nodded like this was all a minor inconvenience. Damien couldn't hear what Catherine said to him, but he saw Mercer's smile finally disappear, saw the senator's face go pale, saw real fear flicker across his features for the first time. Catherine came back. I told him the evidence is going to multiple news outlets within the hour, authenticated or not, because sometimes getting the truth out matters more than following procedure. You'll get in trouble for that. Probably, but I didn't become an FBI agent to protect corrupt politicians. I became one to put them in prison. She helped Damien to his feet. He swayed, nearly fell. Celine caught him, steadied him. She looked as exhausted as he felt, covered in blood and smoke and defeat that was somehow also victory. Is Marcus... Damien started. EMTs are with him now, Vincent said. He'd been searched and released by the FBI. Was standing nearby looking like he'd been through a war, which he had. He's alive, barely. They're transporting him to Brooklyn Methodist. I need to see him. You need a hospital yourself. You look like death warmed over. Later, after I know Marcus is okay. They climbed into Vincent's demolished pickup, still drivable despite the crash, and followed the ambulance to Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. The sun was fully up now, morning traffic building, the city waking up to a Friday that would turn out to be very different from any other Friday in its history. Behind them, FBI agents were securing the warehouse, counting bodies, documenting evidence. Senator Richard Mercer was being loaded into a federal vehicle, hands cuffed, facing charges that would dominate headlines for months. And somewhere in Lower Manhattan, Catherine Reese was about to send 30 years of documented corruption to every major news outlet in the country. The truth was out. The system couldn't contain it. And for the first time in decades, real consequences were coming for people who thought they were untouchable. Damien watched the city scroll past through the truck's cracked windshield, buildings and people and life continuing while everything he'd known had just burned down and rebuilt itself into something new. Celine's hand found his, squeezed once. He squeezed back. They'd survived. Barely. At tremendous cost. But they'd survived. And they'd kept the promise. The rest, whatever came next, whatever consequences followed, would have to wait until after they knew whether Marcus was going to live or die. Because some things mattered more than victory. Some things mattered more than justice. Sometimes, all that mattered was whether the people you loved made it through the fire alive. The hospital waiting room smelled like disinfectant and bad coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow that made healthy people look half dead and actually dying people look like corpses already. Damien sat in a plastic chair that was probably designed to be uncomfortable enough to keep people from lingering too long. His ribs hurt. His head throbbed. Every breath felt like someone was stabbing him with a dull knife. He didn't care. Marcus was in surgery. Had been for 3 hours. The bullet had collapsed his lung, nicked an artery. The doctor said the next few hours would determine everything. Said it with that careful professional tone that meant they were preparing everyone for the worst while pretending there was still hope. Celine sat beside him, head tilted back against the wall, eyes closed. She hadn't said anything in over an hour. Just sat there breathing, existing, processing whatever thoughts were grinding through her exhausted mind. Her face was cleaned up now. A nurse had taken pity on them, brought antiseptic wipes and bandages, treated the worst of her cuts. But the swelling remained. The bruises. The physical evidence of what Mercer's people had done to her. Vincent and the other men who'd survived the warehouse were scattered around the waiting room or outside smoking, giving statements to police, dealing with the aftermath. Two of Vincent's team hadn't made it out. Good men, loyal men, dead because they'd chosen to stand with Damien instead of walking away when they had the chance. Their names were Anthony Costa and James Park. Damien made himself remember that, made himself sit there and feel the weight of it. Two men dead because of his choices, because of a promise his father had made before Damien was old enough to understand what promises cost. His phone buzzed. Catherine Reese. "The evidence is live," she said without preamble. New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, everyone's running it. Authenticated financial records showing systematic corruption spanning 3 decades. Wire transfers, recorded conversations, testimony from witnesses we didn't even know existed. It's everywhere, Damien. There's no putting this back in the bottle. Good. Mercer's lawyers are already filing motions, claiming the evidence was obtained illegally, claiming we violated his rights. It's going to be a circus. But it's out. That's what matters. Yeah, it's out. Catherine paused. How's Marcus? Still in surgery. I'm sorry. Don't be. He knew what he was signing up for. Did he? Did any of you? Because from where I'm sitting, you all walked into a meat grinder for a promise that might not even matter. It matters. To who? Anthony Costa's family? James Park's wife and kids? The dozen other people who died in that warehouse? You think they care about promises and principles when they're burying their loved ones? Damien closed his eyes. What do you want me to say, Catherine? That I'm sorry? That I'd do it differently if I had another chance? I can't say that, because I'd make the same choice again. Even knowing the cost? Especially knowing the cost. Because if I walk away from promises just because they're expensive, then I'm no different from Mercer. I'm just another person who picks and chooses which principles matter based on convenience. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Your father would be proud or horrified. Probably both. Yeah, probably. She hung up. Damien sat there holding the phone, staring at nothing. Beside him, Celine opened her eyes. The evidence is public? She asked. Yeah, so we won. I guess. You don't sound happy about it. 2 men are dead. Marcus might die. Half my organization walked away. The other half is probably going to face federal investigation for their connection to Mercer's network. I'm not sure what winning looks like, but it doesn't feel like this. Celine sat up, winced at some injury Damien couldn't see. My mother spent years investigating Mercer. Years collecting evidence, asking questions, putting pieces together. When they killed her, I was 17. Old enough to understand what had happened, but too young to do anything about it. So I waited, trained, learned everything my grandfather could teach me about survival and patience and how to hurt people who deserved hurting. Spent 11 months pouring wine in your restaurant, watching you, trying to figure out if you were like your father or just another gangster wearing his name. And you're both. You're violent and ruthless and willing to do terrible things for people you've decided deserve your loyalty, but you're also someone who keeps promises even when keeping them costs everything. That's rare. That's worth something. Not to Anthony Costa's family. No, but it's worth something to me, and to my grandfather, and to every person who's going to read that evidence and realize the system they trusted was rotten from the foundation up. You didn't just keep a promise, Damien. You exposed 30 years of corruption. You proved that sometimes people can fight power and win, even if the winning costs everything. That's a hell of a price for a moral victory. All victories cost. The only question is whether you're willing to pay. Before Damien could respond, a doctor emerged from the surgical wing. Middle-aged woman, scrubs stained with blood, the kind of exhausted that went deeper than just physical tiredness. She scanned the waiting room until her eyes landed on Damien. He stood up. His legs felt like water. The doctor walked over. Her expression was carefully neutral. "Mr. Chen is out of surgery," she said. "The next 72 hours are critical. If he makes it through that, his prognosis is good. But he lost a lot of blood. The trauma was extensive. We did everything we could." "Can I see him?" "ICU, family only. Are you family?" "Yes." The doctor studied him for a moment, saw through the lie, decided it didn't matter. 5 minutes. He's sedated. He won't know you're there." "I'll know?" She led him through sterile corridors that all looked the same. White walls, tile floors, that smell of antiseptic trying to cover up the underlying scent of sickness and death. The ICU was quieter than the rest of the hospital, machines beeping in rhythm, nurses moving with practiced efficiency. Marcus lay in a bed surrounded by monitors and tubes. His chest rose and fell with mechanical precision, a ventilator doing the breathing his damaged lungs couldn't manage yet. His face was pale, lips slightly blue, looking more dead than alive. But alive. Still alive. Damien pulled up a chair, sat down beside the bed. Didn't touch anything. Didn't speak. Just sat there looking at the man who'd been his friend, his advisor, his conscience for the past 3 years. The man who'd told him this was insane, and then followed him into it anyway, because that's what loyalty meant. "You were right," Damien said quietly. "About everything. This was insane, walking into that trap. Fighting a senator with institutional power we couldn't match. All of it. But you followed me anyway. And now you're here because I couldn't let go of a promise I didn't even make." The machines beeped. Marcus didn't respond. Didn't move. "If you die," Damien continued, "if you don't make it through this, I want you to know it mattered. What we did. The people we saved. The corruption we exposed. It mattered. And I'm sorry. For dragging you into this. For putting you in a position where following orders meant getting shot. I'm sorry." More beeping, the ventilator's steady rhythm. Life reduced to mechanical processes and numbers on screens. Damien sat there for his 5 minutes. Then the nurse came and told him time was up. He stood, took one last look at Marcus, and walked out before the grief could catch up with him. Celine was waiting in the hallway. "How is he?" "Alive. For now." "That's something." "Yeah." They walked back to the waiting room together. Vincent was there now, talking on his phone, probably coordinating with the remaining organization members about what came next. When he saw Damien, he ended the call. "We've got problems," Vincent said. "The FBI is arresting anyone connected to operations that intersected with Mercer's network. That's about 60% of our people. They're offering deals, testimony in exchange for reduced sentences. Some guys are taking it. Let them. Anyone who wants out, let them go." "That's not how this works. People start talking, they implicate others. The whole structure collapses." "Good. Let it collapse. My father built that structure by compromising with people like Mercer. I'm not rebuilding it the same way." "So what do? We go legitimate. Restructure everything. The businesses that are legal, we keep. Everything else, we shut down or sell off. No more protection money. No more working with corrupt officials. We operate in daylight or we don't operate at all." Vincent stared at him. "You're serious?" "Completely. That's suicide. We lose 90% of our revenue, most of our connections, all the infrastructure your father spent 30 years building. My father spent 30 years building something that required him to hide a man for 2 decades and make promises he couldn't keep without dying first. I'm not doing that. I'm not leaving that burden for someone else." "So you're just giving up? Throwing away the empire?" "I'm choosing what kind of man I want to be. And I don't want to be the kind who builds power by compromising with corruption. If that means losing the empire, then I lose the empire." Vincent shook his head. "Your father would think you're insane." "My father was wrong about a lot of things. Doesn't mean I have to repeat his mistakes." Vincent walked away muttering to himself, probably calling the other guys, telling them their boss had lost his mind. Maybe he was right. Maybe Damien had lost his mind. 3 days ago, he'd been engaged to a senator's daughter, running a criminal empire, living the life his father had built for him. Now he was sitting in a hospital waiting room with no fiancée, no empire, No certainty about anything except that keeping promises was harder than anyone prepared you for. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Then curiosity won. Mr. Vale. A woman's voice, professional and cold. This is Margaret Chen, Marcus's mother. Damien felt ice spread through his chest. Mrs. Chen, I'm so sorry. I should have called you. You should have kept my son out of your war. The words hit like a fist. Damien couldn't breathe. He told me, Margaret continued. Called me 3 days ago. Said he was helping you with something dangerous. Said if anything happened, I should know it was his choice. That he believed in what you were doing. That sometimes loyalty meant following people into fire. Mrs. Chen, I don't want your apologies. I want to know if my son's sacrifice meant something. If he's lying in that hospital bed for a reason that matters, or if this was just more violence dressed up as principle. Damien looked at Celine, at this woman who'd lost her mother to the same corruption they'd just exposed, at Vincent and the other men who'd fought and bled, at the empty chairs where Anthony Costa and James Park should have been sitting. It meant something, Damien said. We exposed 30 years of corruption, brought down a senator who thought he was untouchable, kept a promise that protected innocent people. Your son helped make that happen, and whatever else I am, whatever mistakes I've made, I won't pretend his sacrifice was meaningless. Because it wasn't. It mattered. He matters. Silence. Long enough that Damien thought she'd hung up. Then, he always believed in you, even when your father died and everyone said you were too young, too inexperienced. Marcus believed you'd become something better than your father. I hope he was right. She hung up. Damien stood there holding the phone, feeling the weight of expectations he'd never asked for and couldn't escape. 3 years of trying to live up to a legacy he didn't understand. 3 years of making compromises and deals and choices that slowly turned him into someone he didn't recognize. And now, in the space of 3 days, everything had burned down. The question was what came after the fire. Eats. 2 days later, Damien stood in front of his father's grave. Quiet cemetery in Queens, old trees providing shade, traffic noise muted by distance and stone walls. His father's headstone was simple. Name, dates, nothing else. No epitaph. No platitudes about beloved father or community pillar. Just a name and the years that had contained his life. Damien hadn't visited in 6 months. Kept meaning to. Kept finding excuses not to. Standing here now, he tried to remember what his father's voice sounded like. Came up empty. 3 years wasn't long enough to forget someone completely, but it was long enough for memories to start feeling like stories someone else told you. I kept your promise, Damien said to the headstone. Elias Ward is alive. His granddaughter is alive. The evidence is public. Senator Mercer is facing federal charges. Everything you protected for 22 years finally came to light. The wind moved through the trees. Somewhere nearby, a lawnmower hummed. Marcus almost died keeping that promise. 2 other men did die. My organization is falling apart. Half the people who worked for you think I'm insane. The other half are cooperating with the FBI to save themselves. Everything you built is collapsing. A bird landed on a nearby headstone, watched him with one black eye. I don't know if you'd be proud or disappointed. Probably both. You always were complicated that way. Damien crouched down, touched the grass in front of the headstone. I spent 3 years trying to understand you, trying to figure out what kind of man builds an empire on violence and corruption while making promises that contradict everything that empire stands for. I still don't have an answer. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe you were just doing the best you could with impossible choices. He stood up. Behind him, footsteps on gravel. He turned. Celine walked toward him, hands in her jacket pockets, moving carefully because her ribs were still healing. Your grandfather told me I'd find you here, she said. How is he? Better? The medication's working. FBI has him in protective custody until the trial. He's giving testimony. About everything. 30 years of watching Mercer build his corruption network. It's going to bury half of New York's political establishment. Good. Is it? You sound like you're not sure anymore. Damien looked at his father's grave. I'm not sure about anything. 3 days ago, I thought I understood how the world worked. Now I'm standing in a cemetery talking to a dead man about promises and principles while everything I knew falls apart. Celine moved beside him, studied the headstone. Your father and my grandfather were friends. Partners. My grandfather says they believed in something once, before the money got too big and the stakes got too high. They believed you could operate in the criminal world without becoming the kind of monster who kills innocent people, that you could have power without corruption, that there was a line you didn't cross no matter what. You believe that? I don't know, but I think they tried. I think they drew their line, and your father kept it for 22 years. That has to count for something. Maybe. They stood in silence for a while. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of cut grass and distant rain. October sliding toward November. The city preparing for winter. Marcus woke up this morning, Celine said quietly. He's off the ventilator. Doctors say he'll make a full recovery. Damien felt something break loose in his chest. Relief so intense it hurt. You're sure? I was there when his mother got the call. He's asking for you. Then let's go. They walked back through the cemetery toward Celine's borrowed car. Halfway there, Damien stopped. I'm shutting down the organization, he said. Everything illegal. Everything that connects to Mercer's network. I'm going legitimate, or I'm walking away completely. That's going to make you a lot of enemies. I already have a lot of enemies. What's a few more? Fair point. Celine opened the car door, paused. For what it's worth, I think it's the right choice. The brave choice. Or the stupid one. Those aren't mutually exclusive. They drove to Brooklyn Methodist, found Marcus in a regular room now, instead of ICU. He looked better. Color in his face, breathing on his own, sitting up slightly. His mother sat beside the bed holding his hand. When she saw Damien, her expression was complicated. Grief, anger, gratitude, all mixed together. Mrs. Chen, Damien said, I'm so glad he's okay. She stood up, walked over to him. For a second, Damien thought she might slap him. Instead, she pulled him into a hug. Thank you, she whispered, for bringing him back. She left before Damien could respond, left him standing there with Celine, looking at Marcus, trying to find words for everything that had happened. You look like hell, Marcus said. His voice was rough, damaged from the ventilator tube. Yeah, well, you look worse. Probably. I got shot. What's your excuse? Kept a promise, fought a senator, destroyed my father's empire. Take your pick. Marcus laughed, then winced. Don't make me laugh. Hurts too much. He shifted, trying to get comfortable. I heard about the organization. Vincent says you're shutting everything down. I am. That's insane. So I've been told. I mean it, boss. You can't just walk away. There are obligations, people depending on us, infrastructure that took decades to build. Infrastructure built on compromise with corruption. I'm done compromising. So what's the plan? We all get normal jobs, 9 to 5, become accountants and stockbrokers? Something like that. The legitimate businesses can stay. Everything else goes. And the people who don't want to go legitimate? They're free to walk. No hard feelings. Marcus closed his eyes. Your father spent his whole life building something that would outlast him, something you could inherit and expand. You're throwing that away. My father also made promises that required him to hide a man for 22 years and left me to clean up the mess when he died. I'm not doing that to the next generation. Whatever I build, it's going to be something I can defend in daylight. Noble, naive, but noble. You disagree? I think you're trying to be a good man in a world that punishes good men. But, Marcus opened his eyes. But I also think someone has to try. Otherwise, we're all just predators fighting over scraps. So if you're doing this, if you're really going legitimate, then I'm with you, whatever that means. Even after I nearly got you killed, especially after that, you walked into a trap to save someone you barely knew because keeping promises mattered more than survival. That's the kind of person worth following, even if they are occasionally insane. Celine laughed, a quiet sound, but genuine. He's got a point. About which part? Both parts. Damien pulled up a chair, sat down. His ribs still hurt. His head still throbbed. But sitting here with Marcus alive and Celine beside him, and the weight of his father's legacy finally starting to lift, he felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. 3 weeks later, the trial started. Senator Richard Mercer stood before a federal judge facing charges of corruption, racketeering, conspiracy, and accessory to murder. His lawyers had filed every motion possible to suppress the evidence, to delay the trial, to create reasonable doubt. But the evidence was overwhelming. 30 years of financial records, authenticated recordings, testimony from dozens of witnesses who'd been too afraid to speak until now. Damien attended the first day, sat in the back of the courtroom watching Mercer sit at the defendant's table, looking smaller than he had on that pier, looking almost human without his aura of untouchable power. The senator's eyes scanned the gallery, found Damien, held his gaze for a long moment. Then Mercer smiled. Not a friendly smile, not even defiant, just a smile that said, "This isn't over. You haven't won. I'll find a way out because men like me always do." Maybe he would. Maybe the system he'd spent 30 years building would protect him even now. Maybe he'd walk away with a slap on the wrist while everyone below him took the fall. But the evidence was public. The truth was out. And even if Mercer escaped legal consequences, his reputation was destroyed. His political career was over. The network he'd built was fractured beyond repair. That had to be enough. Because it was all they had. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Damien pushed through them without comment, Celine beside him, both of them heading for the car Vincent had parked a block away. Behind them, questions shouted about his father, about the organization, about his relationship with Elias Ward, about everything. He ignored all of it. They drove back to Brooklyn, to the office Damien was converting into something legitimate. A consulting firm, maybe. Security services. Something that operated in daylight and paid taxes and didn't require him to compromise with people who murdered innocent civilians. Half the organization had walked. The other half was adapting, learning new ways to operate, figuring out how to make money without breaking laws. It was slow. It was painful. Some days, Damien wasn't sure they'd survive, but they were trying. That counted for something. Elias visited that afternoon, looking healthier than Damien had ever seen him. The medication was working. The stress of hiding was gone. He looked 10 years younger despite being 70-something. "I wanted to thank you," Elias said. They sat in Damien's new office, actual office, not warehouse, with real furniture and windows overlooking the street. "For keeping your father's promise, for protecting Celine, for finishing what we started." "You don't need to thank me. I did what was right." Doing what's right and keeping promises aren't the same thing. You did both. That's rare. "My father taught me that, even if he taught it by example instead of words." Elias nodded slowly. "Your father was complicated. We all were back then. The world was different. The rules were different. We made choices we thought were necessary, compromised in ways we told ourselves didn't matter. But your father drew a line. When I needed help, when my family was in danger, he didn't hesitate, didn't calculate the cost, just helped. That's who he was underneath all the violence and criminal empire, a man who kept his word. I wish he'd told me that himself. Maybe he thought you'd figure it out. Maybe he thought showing you was better than telling you. Maybe." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, Brooklyn hummed with afternoon life. Traffic, people, the endless motion of a city that never stopped moving. Damien thought about his father sitting in warehouses making deals, building an empire one compromise at a time. Thought about the promise that had outlasted him, the secret he'd kept for 22 years, the burden he'd left his son. "Would you do it again?" Damien asked. "If you could go back knowing what it would cost, would you still gather that evidence? Still try to expose Mercer?" Elias didn't hesitate. "Yes, because my daughter would still be alive if I'd acted sooner. Because every day I waited, Mercer hurt more people. The cost of acting was high, but the cost of not acting was higher. Even if acting meant dying? Especially then. Because what's the point of living if you're too afraid to do what's right?" Celine appeared in the doorway. "Grandfather, we need to go. Your FBI escort is getting impatient." Elias stood up, shook Damien's hand. "Your father would be proud, not of the empire falling apart, but of the man you're becoming. The man who'd rather lose everything than compromise his principles. That's worth more than any empire." They left. Damien sat alone in his office, watching the sun set over Brooklyn, painting the buildings gold and red. His phone buzzed. Text from Vivian. "I heard about the organization. About you going legitimate. That's very noble. Very stupid, but noble. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about how things ended. You deserve better than what my family put you through." He didn't respond. What was there to say? They'd both been pawns in other people's games, playing roles written before they were old enough to understand what they were signing up for. She'd chosen her father's side. He'd chosen the promise. Some gaps were too wide to bridge. Another text, this time from Catherine Reese. Mercer's lawyers are negotiating a plea deal, reduced charges in exchange for testimony against other people in his network. He might avoid prison entirely. Damien stared at the message, felt anger rise in his chest, hot and bitter. After everything, the deaths, the sacrifices, the cost, Mercer might walk away, might trade his freedom for other people's, might prove that the system really did protect men like him, no matter what evidence existed. But then he thought about Elias's words, about the cost of acting versus the cost of not acting, about doing what's right even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. They'd expose the truth. That had to be enough. Because demanding perfect justice in an imperfect world was a recipe for endless disappointment. He typed back, "Let me know if you need testimony. I'll be there." Catherine responded immediately. "You'll be called, probably repeatedly. This case is going to drag on for years. Hope you're ready for that." "I'm not, but I'll do it anyway. That's what I figured. For what it's worth, you did good work. Your father would be proud." Everyone kept saying that. Damien wasn't sure he believed it, but maybe that was the point. Maybe you didn't do the right thing for approval or pride or legacy. Maybe you did it because the alternative was becoming someone you couldn't live with. Marcus appeared in the doorway, still moving carefully, one hand pressed against his healing ribs. "You're supposed to be resting," Damien said. "I got bored. What are you doing?" "Thinking." "About?" "Whether this was worth it. Whether destroying everything to keep a promise makes sense, or if I'm just justifying chaos with moral reasoning." Marcus walked to the window, stood beside Damien looking out at the city. "You want to know what I think?" "Always." "I think you're asking the wrong question. It's not about whether it was worth it. It's about whether you could live with yourself if you hadn't done it. And I know you, boss. You couldn't. You'd have spent the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you'd kept your father's promise. Wondering if Elias and Celine died because you were too practical to risk everything. That kind of guilt destroys people from the inside. So I destroyed everything from the outside instead? You transformed it. There's a difference. The Empire's gone, yeah. But maybe the Empire needed to go. Maybe it was built on foundations that couldn't support anything good. So you tore it down and you're building something new, something better. That takes courage. Or stupidity. Still not mutually exclusive. They stood in the fading light. Two men who'd survived a war they never wanted, trying to figure out what came next. Behind them, the office was quiet. Outside, Brooklyn hummed with evening traffic and life continuing despite everything that had changed. Damien's phone buzzed one more time. Celine. "My grandfather and I are going back to Connecticut tomorrow. Back to the life we left when this started. But I wanted to say goodbye properly. Dinner? Tonight? No wine throwing this time, I promise." Damien smiled, typed back, "Le Nocturne, 8 p.m. Perfect. See you there." He pocketed the phone, looked at Marcus. "Want to come to dinner? Third wheel on your date? I'll pass." "It's not a date." "Sure it's not. Woman risks her life with you, fights beside you, helps you take down a corrupt senator. Totally not date material. She's going back to Connecticut tomorrow. Then you better not waste tonight." Marcus left, still moving carefully, still healing, but alive. Damien watched him go, then grabbed his jacket. He had 3 hours before dinner. 3 hours to shower, change, figure out what you said to someone who'd shared your apocalypse. Le Nocturne looked the same as always. Black windows, quiet elegance, dangerous money sitting at tables pretending the world outside didn't exist. But walking through those doors felt different now. Damien wasn't the man he'd been 3 weeks ago. Wasn't the heir to an empire built on compromise. Wasn't engaged to a senator's daughter. Wasn't anyone except himself trying to figure out what that meant. Celine was already there. Same booth where this had all started. But she wasn't wearing a waitress uniform. She wore a simple black dress, her hair down, the swelling on her face almost gone. She looked beautiful in a way that made Damien's chest tighten. He sat down across from her. No scripts this time, no performances. Just two people who'd survived something impossible trying to have a normal conversation. "You came," Celine said. "You sound surprised." I wasn't sure you'd want to see me. After everything. After what it cost. The cost wasn't your fault. I'm the one who whispered a dead man's name. I'm the one who started this. No. Mercer started this when he killed your mother. You just finished it. A waiter appeared. Not the kid from 3 weeks ago, someone new. He took their order with professional efficiency and disappeared. They were left with silence and the weight of everything unsaid. What will you do? Damien asked. In Connecticut. Live quietly. Take care of my grandfather. Maybe go back to school. I never finished my degree. Dropped out when I decided to infiltrate your restaurant. She smiled slightly. Terrible career move. You exposed 30 years of corruption. I'd say that's worth a degree. Maybe, but I can't took down a senator on a resume without raising questions. Fair point. More silence. The restaurant hummed around them. Conversation, laughter, the clink of expensive silverware against expensive plates. Normal life. The kind they'd both walked away from to fight a war nobody asked them to fight. I'm glad I met you, Celine said suddenly. Even if meeting you almost got me killed. Even if it cost everything. I'm glad I didn't do this alone. Me too. Your father and my grandfather. They fought this fight alone. Carried the burden alone. Kept secrets that destroyed them from the inside. We had each other. That made it bearable. Barely. Barely is better than not at all. Their food arrived. They ate in comfortable silence. No need to fill every pause with words. Just existed together. Two people who'd seen each other at their worst and somehow found something worth keeping. After dinner, they walked along the Hudson River. Cold November wind off the water. City lights reflecting on dark waves. The kind of night that made you feel small and significant at the same time. I'll visit, Damien said. Connecticut, when things settle, when the trial's over. You don't have to. I know, but I want to. Celine stopped walking, turned to face him. Her green eyes reflected the city lights, making them look like they were full of stars. My mother believed in justice, she said quietly, believed that truth mattered, that exposing corruption could change things. She died for that belief. For 11 years I thought she died for nothing, that Mercer was too powerful, too protected. But you proved her right. You kept your father's promise and exposed the truth. You made her death mean something. I'm sorry I couldn't do more. You did everything. You risked everything. That's more than most people would do. She kissed him then. Not passionate, not desperate. Just a kiss that tasted like goodbye and thank you, and maybe someday. Then she stepped back, smiled one more time, and walked toward the car waiting to take her back to Connecticut. Damien stood alone on the river walk, watching her taillights disappear into traffic. Felt the weight of it, the ending, the beginning, the strange space between victory and loss where you couldn't tell which one you'd achieved. His phone buzzed. Marcus, how'd it go? She left? Forever? I don't know, maybe. But you're okay. Damien thought about that. About everything he'd lost, everything he'd gained, the empire destroyed, the promise kept, the truth exposed, the cost paid in blood and sacrifice, and two men who'd never see another sunrise. Yeah. I'm okay. Good. Come back to the office. Vincent found something you should see. Damien turned away from the river, from the view of Manhattan glowing across the water. Started walking back toward Brooklyn, toward the office, toward whatever came next. Behind him, the city hummed its endless song. People living and dying and making choices that rippled outward in ways they'd never see. His father had made choices that shaped Damien's life before he was born. Now Damien had made choices that would shape whatever came after. The empire was gone. The promise was kept. And in the space between destruction and creation, Damien Vale was finally free to become whoever he chose to be. Not his father's son. Not a criminal inheriting a legacy he didn't want. Just a man trying to do right in a world that made righteousness expensive. And if that was all he accomplished, if rebuilding meant starting from nothing with no guarantees of success, then at least he'd know he'd tried. At least he'd know the promises he kept were his own. At least he'd know that when the next generation looked back at his choices, they'd see someone who'd chosen principle over power, even when power was the easier path. The future was uncertain. The cost was paid. And Damien walked into whatever came next with his eyes open and his conscience clear, knowing that some wars were worth fighting even when you couldn't guarantee victory. Because the alternative was surrender. And surrender meant becoming everything his father had spent 22 years hiding from. So Damien kept walking, kept moving forward, kept choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. And somewhere in Connecticut, Celine Ward watched the city disappear in a rearview mirror, carrying the memory of a man who'd kept a promise when keeping it cost everything. The story was over, but the consequences would echo for generations. And maybe that was the point.